Tragedy happens in lives. Unfortunately, it was their lives.
The world wouldn't know his name until after his killing spree had ended. Now, in a rare prison interview, serial killer Joel Rifkin talks about his sickening crimes down to the smallest detail.
I think the scariest thing I learned from these videos is that there are some truly evil people in this world. People that will take others' lives and feel no remorse or pain. In today's video, let's look at some of these people. From Charles Manson going absolutely crazy in an interview, to a hitman talking about some of the people he has taken out. Let's talk about these interviews and more only in today's video. Top 10 disturbing interviews with evil people, part 3. Starting off this countdown, we have Gary Ridgway. Gary Ridgway, otherwise known as the Green River Killer, took the lives of 48 women between 1980 to 1990. But it's believed that his number may be as high as 71 people. He gets his name due to the fact that he would dump the bodies along riverbanks in South King County. In 2001, he was arrested. After his conviction, he did an interview where he talked all about his murders and how he had the desire to kill ever since he was little.
But I took my aggression on. I couldn't take it on my mom. I had to take it on my animals. And
as stated in the interview, he confessed that he started killing at a young age. He had this built-up anger towards his mom, but he couldn't harm her, so he would harm animals instead.
Living things?
Living things, killing animals.
Okay.
Killing animals.
In this interview, he went on to talk more about his victims in detail. Hearing someone confess to murder is just very, very disturbing. In our 9th spot, we have John Hughes. But before I go any further, make sure to hit that thumbs up button because it really helps us out.
I don't think like normal people. Never have. I have racing thoughts. It's been that way since I was a kid. I'm constantly, it doesn't matter if I'm sleeping, if I'm awake, I'm constantly thinking of 100 things at one time.
John Hughes considers himself the Antichrist. He was arrested back in 2008 after killing a trucker at a rest stop along Interstate 29. This dude is intense and incredibly scary. He claims to have killed 15 to 20 people, but that hasn't been confirmed yet. Either way, in this interview for KMBC News, Lara Moretz gets the chance to interview him. And he talks about the people he has taken the lives of, and why he did this.
Rest area, and that was a way for me to gain control, to show, I don't know, I guess assert my dominance, I guess you could say. That'd be the way to put it. And it shut everybody up for a while.
The scariest part of the interview is when Lara asks if he feels bad about killing people. And this was his response.
I don't feel bad about killing anyone.
Not personally, that I've personally done myself, no. I just view things as objects. People, animals, trees, cars, they're just all the same to me.
So no, he feels no remorse. In our 8th spot, we have Jose Martinez.
Explanation because I want to get them. I didn't want the cops to find them. I want to find them myself. We went to this little house. We broke in there and we find one, I shot him.
This dude is one you never want to mess with. And he reveals why during his interview. Basically, Jose was a hitman for a drug cartel. He admitted to killing 3 dozen people as a hitman, and dozens of others just on his own, many of whom were people that just pissed him off. For example, in this interview he talks about one of his brother-in-law's friends. Whenever the friend would visit, he would tell him to park on the side of the road, not on his driveway. He told him this a number of times, yet he still continued to park on the driveway. So what did he do? He asked the guy to take him for a ride in his truck. He then shot him, just to teach him a lesson.
I told him, didn't I tell you not to park in my driveway? And he said he didn't listen to nobody except his mother. Okay.
Moving on to number 7, we have Charles Manson. Charles Manson was an infamous cult leader who got his followers to carry out a number of murders in the late 1960s. Manson is probably best known for the killing of the actress Sharon Tate. Well, in 1988 he did an interview and people were terribly freaked out by it. In the interview, he is talking gibberish. Half the stuff he says just doesn't make sense. Interviewer Geraldo Rivera tries to understand what Charles is going on about. At one point, Charles just gets so mad at him and starts yelling at him.
No, you who else knows what else you do? Whoa, I said, you haven't seen the bloody trail yet. You haven't seen the bloody trail yet.
What do you mean?
Oh, it's been worse than that. You think, the 9 was just the first little marbles in the bucket. There's a whole row of people out there that's been getting killed.
At another point, he says, all you want to do is sell death, blood, and fear. So, that's creepy. And then at another point, he just gets up and starts doing this weird dance.
Yeah, I make the laws from here.
Which, according to a number of sources, he did this in a number of interviews randomly. He did this to avoid prison, so people would be like, oh, he's not in the right set of mind, he needs to be placed elsewhere.
Number 5. Jeffrey Dahmer. I'm actually surprised Dahmer hasn't made it onto this list until now, but here he is. What creeps me out the most about Dahmer is his awareness that what he was doing was wrong. He just couldn't help himself. With a genius level IQ of 145, Dahmer was a ticking time bomb. His desire to mutilate started out the way you expect with animals as a young child, but prior to his rise to crime, he fell to alcohol abuse and dropped out of business school before enlisting in the US Army. According to Dahmer, he knew what he wanted to do, but he just hadn't found the opportunity. But he was discharged after attacking 2 fellow soldiers, and it was after this that he began pursuing the title of the Milwaukee Cannibal, which is what he became later. Between 1971 and 1991, he killed 17 men in a variety of gruesome ways and celebrated each and every one. One of the things he did that I wish I didn't know was he attempted to make a human zombie by drilling into his victims' heads. One of his victims escaped and notified police. When they got there, the chief medical examiner remarked it was more like dismantling someone's museum than an actual crime scene. Dahmer was killed behind bars by another inmate in 1994. Number 4. The Monster of Ecatepec. Truly a monster. There are monsters in this world, as this series of lists have proven. Juan and Patricia Carlos were responsible for taking the lives of over 20 women, causing widespread panic in Mexico City in 2018. Patricia was his helper and would lure women to their home by promising them cheap clothes. Once inside, Juan would take over and severely violate them in perverse ways before taking their lives. The couple would also remove organs and feed them to their dogs. They were not picky with their victims either, making it hard for authorities to develop a pattern. They took any woman they found, even a young mother, and they tried to sell her infant she left behind. But unfortunately though, quite gruesomely, the 2 were caught when they were found pushing a stroller of body parts. Carlos warned police after his arrest that should he be released, he will do it all again, so they better listen to him. Just keep him there. Coming up to number 3, if you like this list so far, make sure to show some love, like, subscribe, comment, do your thing. It's gonna get weirder from here, so if this is too much for you, please take a moment, go for a walk, do what you need to do, and then come on back. Number 3, Andre Chikatilo. I think the creepiest and most evil people are the ones you least expect, and that's what terrifies me about this guy. I would take a poltergeist any day over someone like Andre. Andre was a teacher in the Soviet Union, trusted by so many, but little did anyone know he took the lives of 50 young people before he was caught. His case actually inspired the book Child 44 by Tom Robb-Smith, which is actually one of my favorites, by the way, couldn't put it down. The reason he was able to get away with the killings for so long was because of the USSR. Crimes like this didn't exist in Stalin's Russia, so these events were often covered up at the scene, so it was easy for criminals like this to get away. Meanwhile, Andre was addicted to taking the lives of these women, as it was the only way he could achieve satisfaction. The reason he was so pathologically messed up started in his early childhood. Stalin's agricultural policies caused widespread famine, and from part 1 we know he's not a good guy himself. But Andre was believed to have suffered from water on the brain at birth, causing him to get frequent UTIs and often wet his bed. He was also bullied due to his father's capture in World War II because it was seen as cowardly. Whatever the cause may be, he still committed some vicious crimes, and thankfully he was arrested in the 1990s. And though we have sympathy for him, man, takes a certain kind of person to do something so horrible. And number 2, Shiro Ishii. We've talked about Mengele in a previous video, but it's time we talked about Ishii. Ishii and Mengele honestly probably would have been best friends, both having a sick fascination with cruelty and medicine. Shiro Ishii was the director of Unit 731 in the Department of Biological Weapons for the Japanese Army in World War II. What was his job? To develop an understanding of the most deadly kinds of science. How? Well, I bet you can guess. He would perform all of his experiments on prisoners of war trying to understand disease, warfare, and sickness. He would perform horrendous experiments such as injecting prisoners prisoners with diseases like anthrax and testing out biological weapons on them. His unit even performed live vivisections on prisoners, inflicting them with hypothermia, frostbite, induced strokes, and heart attacks. His cruelty resulted in the deaths of thousands of people. The war was awful, but because of him, soldiers would have rather been shot than sent to a Japanese POW camp. But the worst part is, the US pardoned him in exchange for the results of his experiments. That is absolutely shameful to me. I hate that. Number 1. Norway terror. July 2011 was a horrific day for the people of Norway after 77 people were killed by right-wing extremist Anders Breivik. At 3:26 p.m. on July 22nd, a fertilizer bomb went off outside the building of the Prime Minister. 8 people were killed. After that, Anders ventured to Utoya Island wearing a police uniform. Young adults were at a Labour Party youth camp on which Anders opened fire, taking out anyone who tried to escape. Finally, at 6:27, he was taken into custody by the Norwegian police unit. Beyond the 69 young adults whose lives were taken, 319 people were injured, and a later study showed that 1 in 4 people in Norway knew someone who had been there. This was the worst crime ever committed in Norway, and with 1 in 4 Norwegians having known someone, it hit very close to home to many of them. But the worst part about Anders is that though he admitted to the crime, he denied responsibility because the crimes were necessary. The saddest part about making these lists is that there really is no shortage of awful people in the world. The best we can do is try to be one of the good ones. At number 10, we have William Devon Howell. One of the few people on this list that have actually been caught, which means some more terrifying things are on the way, just a heads up. In 2003, Nilsa Arizmendia was seen getting into a 1985 Ford Econoline which belonged to Howell at the time. She had no idea that this very car is the vehicle Howell referred to as the mobile. Sorry. After her blood was found in the car, Howell was arrested, but the blood was anything but cold when 3 more bodies were discovered along the same stretch of road in 2007. They prayed that was it until 4 more bodies were found in 2015 in the same area. The land in question is the area behind a strip mall in Connecticut. Investigators finally linked the bodies to Howell after he confessed to another inmate about his garden. Even more disturbing is that he used to sleep next to the corpses as they decomposed before he disposed of them. The most terrifying factor about this man is the fact that the body count just never appears to stop. Could there still be more he hasn't confessed to? Probably. And we might get to that later on in this list. Number 9. Hazel Liotta Head. Imagine being able to evade the police in this day and age when there are practically cameras everywhere. And perhaps even spyware in our phones, right Google? Hazel Liotta Head is just one of the names this woman uses and has been wanted since 1998. She took the life of a man named Charles Barker after conning the widower by pretending she was a woman named Deanna Ray. Barker had lost his wife of 11 years to a drunk driver, and Deanna swept in to save his sunken heart. His family became suspicious of her, but by the time they knew something was wrong, Deanna had put a bullet to his head. His gun was wiped clean, the safe was entirely empty, and his car was found in an airport with DNA on the seat that identified Deanna as Hazel. However, this was only one of the aliases she used, as she had been married over 10 times. Although Hazel would be around 72 today, we have no idea what she looks like. She could be anyone, perhaps someone you know, someone who might be beside you on the bus or in line at the coffee shop. Could you be her next target? Number 8. Israel Keys. I can only imagine the kind of horrors that a soldier sees, and it's because of them that I hopefully will never have to, but terrifyingly, it seems Israel Keys brought them home. In 2011, Keys revealed his plan he had been waiting to act on for years. He had planted what he liked to call kits. Only he knew where they were. When he was finally discharged from service, he turned off his cell phone, flew to Chicago, and then drove a rental to Vermont. He used cash for everything so as not to be traced by card. Back in 2009, Keys had buried one of these supply kits in Vermont and decided to use one on a random couple he'd met. His most famous victim was Samantha Koenig in Alaska in 2012. As if robbing her of her life wasn't enough, he taunted her family with texts, photographs, debit withdrawals to make them think that she was still alive. Keys himself admitted to taking the lives of 8 people, though only 3 have been identified to this day. The most terrifying part about this man was his lack of pattern, however meticulously he planned. So that kind of seems hypocritical, but it's like he did it at random to whoever he wanted to, but he also planned it out, so creepy. Though he may be behind bars for now, one day we might find another of his victims, and who knows what horror discoveries that will lead to. Number 7, Vicki Jackson. Yet another on this list, thankfully behind bars. Jackson is still a grim reminder that not all people who seem good are. From December 2001 to February of that same year, Vicki took the lives of 20 people and attempted to steal 5 more. She worked as a nurse in the small town north of Texas for a while when all of a sudden her hospital went under a plague of respiratory deaths. But all the patients who died were elderly, so it wasn't uncommon and nobody thought anything of it. But Vicki made one foolish mistake. No one would have been suspicious until one nurse noticed several vials of mivacurium chloride were missing. This drug is used to temporarily disable a patient's ability to breathe. Why that's even a thing I don't know, but probably for surgical reasons. Then another one of her colleagues recalled how Jackie would often say, "I'll take care of them," referring to unruly patients. Investigators narrowed in on Jackson and she admitted to all the crimes even though it took until July 2002 for her arrest. So it just makes me kind of creeped out about, you know, people we leave like this one creeps me out because this could be anyone, you know what I mean? And I also hate the fact that she abused a job that is so necessary and so important and just, you know, terrifying, don't like that. Number 6, the West Essa bone collector. February 2nd, 2009 would change Christina Ross forever. What started as a simple dog walk ended in a disturbing discovery. She and her dog encountered human bones on a mesa near Albuquerque, New Mexico, which police were shocked to confirm was the case. The bones belonged to women who were reported missing from 2001 to 2005, from the ages 15 to 32. All 11 of the women were in some way linked to street work, save one, and it took examiners close to a year to identify them all. The perpetrator has since been named the West Mesa bone collector, but that's about as far as they've gotten. Dead end after dead end, detectives are stumped and terrified that a killer like this could evade them. The case remains open to this day, and the FBI has had a reward out for $100 grand for information regarding the case for over a decade. I hope this case warms up and this evil person, whoever they are, is caught, but it's still disturbing that someone can get away with something like that in this day and age.
In our 8th spot, we have Ted Bundy. Now, what was so scary about Ted Bundy is how smart he was. He was the definition of evil genius. So basically, he would use his smarts to manipulate women and then kill them. Bundy is said to be responsible for murdering 30 women, although it's thought that his number is much higher. Now, Bundy was actually able to escape custody multiple times. The first time, he jumped out of a 2nd-story building and fled while at the courthouse. He had planned this for days, practicing jumping from his top bed bunk in prison down to the floor to strengthen his ankles. Now, eventually he was caught, but then a while later he escaped again. This time, he forced himself to lose weight in order to squeeze through a hole in his cell ceiling. When he did escape the second time, he went on to murder more women, until being caught once again. In our 7th spot, we have Charles Manson. Infamous cult leader Charles Manson, who led the Manson family cult, had his followers commit crimes and murders on his behalf. Some of his members committed a series of 9 murders in July and August of 1969. In 1971, Manson was convicted of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder for the deaths of 7 people, including film actress Sharon Tate. What's scary about Manson is that he was also an evil genius. If you've ever seen his interviews, he acts quite wild and strange. People think that he's out of his mind. At one point, he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and paranoid delusion disorder, but some people think that he was just too smart for his own good and he was just faking all of this. In 1971, Manson received the death sentence, but a year later, the government got rid of capital punishment, so his sentence was changed to life in prison instead. In our 6th spot, we have Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. Between 1963 and 1965, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley worked together to torture, take advantage of, and kill a number of young individuals. What they did was incredibly messed up, and it'll make your stomach churn. Now, these two were actually given the name the Moors Murderers, because after taking the lives of their victims, they would bury their bodies on the moors outside of Manchester. Both individuals were sentenced to life in prison for their crimes. Ian was actually placed in solitary confinement, whereas Myra died in prison in 2002.
Granada. Ever heard of the Spanish Inquisition? Well, this guy was one of its star killers. Not only do we wish it never happened in the first place, it did, so we might as well talk about it and learn from it. But we can't discuss the Inquisition without mentioning Tomas, who was responsible for thousands of deaths. He gave people 2 choices. either join the Catholic Church or die, which led to thousands of Jewish and Islamic people being exiled from Spain. He played the role of inquisitor and was in charge of investigating and punishing heretics. He oversaw the burning of thousands of innocent people, as Tomas often used cruel methods of extracting confessions from people he believed to be heretics. He seemed to almost enjoy his job, hanging, burning, suffocating, and tormenting people with the rack and waterboarding. No one knows exactly how many people died during the Inquisition, but historians estimate anywhere between 30,000 to 300,000. Pretty wide gap there. Number 9. Caligula. Man, his name is too fun to say. Too bad he wasn't a fun guy. It's better I tell you now that essentially this list is a depiction of what happens when the wrong people get their hands on power. From 37 AD to 41 AD, Caligula ruled as if he was some kind of mad god that needed to be satisfied. Not only did his addiction to gambling cause a nightmare for the economy, he seemed to delight in suffering. In the first 3 months of his rule, he made his people sacrifice 160,000 animals in his name. When he first took over as ruler, people actually liked him though. He made helpful political reforms and recalled exiles, but most people blame his future tyranny on a brain fever that befell him later on. He blew money on lavish projects, some still helpful like aqueducts, to building a 2-mile long floating bridge across the Bay of Bali so he could ride his horse across it day after day. He even ordered his men to attack the sea by collecting shells with their helmets. His lascivious love affairs included copulating with the wives of his allies and even allegedly his own sisters. Caligula's reign was equal parts terrifying and embarrassing, which is probably why his officers stabbed him to death. Number 8. Leopold II of Belgium. During the height of colonialism, Leopold of Belgium wanted to make his mark by conquering the African Congo. As soon as I say colonialism, you know where things are going, so get ready. He made it his property, and instead of, being a good human being, he decided to establish a dictatorship instead. He made the rest of Europe think that he was acting as a good guy, so they'd give him money, then proceeded to hire mercenaries. These mercenaries were set with the task of draining as much money from the state by enforcing free labor camps. Anyone who disobeyed or failed to meet demands were severely punished and even had their limbs removed. Leopold was responsible for the deaths of 20% of the population and thankfully was stopped before he could do more damage. Roger Casement, after doing a little digging, released a report which detailed the horrors he had committed under the guise of philanthropy. He was forced to surrender the Congo, though it was considered a part of Belgium until the 1950s. Whew, buckle up folks, it only gets worse from here. It's number 7 and we're already at Genghis Khan. Get ready. Genghis Khan, ruler of the Mongolian Empire, killed so many people. He changed the carbon footprint of the earth. In one single battle, he killed over 1.2 million people. Though this sounds like an exaggeration, I don't find it hard to believe, since he just left the corpses to rot. The battlefields became oily and whole mountains of bodies formed. Genghis Khan was supposedly responsible for over 40 million deaths. If you need a number to compare that to, that's the same amount of people who died in World War I altogether. He also enjoyed in excess the spoils of war, brutalizing women and assaulting them. In addition to that, he held mass beauty contests, and all those who didn't win would be given to his soldiers like objects. Because of that, around 16 million people are said to be descendants of him today. That's how many people Many people blame his brutal and ruthless upbringing, as Khan very much had to raise himself under the mentality to kill or be killed. He even killed his own brother at age 10 just for not sharing food. He was also horrendous when it came to tormenting his betrayers. Some ways include pouring molten silver down their throats and sawing people in half while they were still alive. Oh, and he killed 75% of the population of Iran and tried to commit an entire genocide. Yeah, the list goes on, but so does this list, and there is more to come, so let's go. Number 6. Talat Pasha. Pasha was the Grand Vizier to the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire in the early 20th century and was the main architect of the Armenian genocide. When Armenian families were evicted from their homes in 1915, his signature was on the orders. On April 24th, they executed several hundred intellectuals in order to begin Turkifying the country. Many were sent through the Mesopotamian desert on death marches without food or water after being stripped naked so the sun would just boil them alive. Anyone who stopped walking was shot. He also created a special organization made of killers and ex-convicts who were ordered to carry out the liquidation of the Christian elements. They drowned people in rivers, threw civilians off cliffs, even crucified and burned people alive. Yep, this happened in the 1900s, by the way. So there are about 600,000 to 1.5 million reasons we wish this man never existed, because that is how many people Pasha was responsible for killing. Ooh, man. Number 5, Idi Amin. General Idi Amin staged a coup on January 25th, 1971 and forced Uganda's first Prime Minister Milton Obote into exile. From there, he created a reign of terror that abused Uganda's freedom after more than 70 years of British rule. Amin organized mass executions of Akoli and Lango Christian tribes who were loyal to Obote. He terrorized his own country with internal security forces whose main purpose was to eliminate those who opposed him. His brutality also resulted in the collapse of the economy. This man just seemed like he just didn't have a single good bone in his body. He was also rumored to have eaten human flesh, and his vicious and inhumane rule resulted in the death of 300,000 civilians. Eventually Amin was forced to flee and sought refuge in Saudi Arabia, though he was never punished for his crimes and died in 2003 due to organ failure. So he got away with it, essentially. Number 4, Pol Pot. You'd think a leader's job would be to protect and serve their country with love and respect, but I guess Pol Pot didn't see it that way. Originally named Salah Sar, Pot was the leader of the Khmer Rouge totalitarian regime during 1975 to 79 in Cambodia, though technically longer. It was a radical communist government who caused the death of more than 2 million people through forced labor, starvation, disease, torment, persecution, and execution. He wanted to purify society and wanted to extinguish capitalism, Western culture, city life, religion, and all foreign influences in order to form a pure communist regime. All media outlets, along with embassies and external medical help, were refused, and essentially he barricaded Cambodia into their own little world. Education was halted, healthcare eliminated. It was crazy. The people were forced into slave labor on the killing fields, only allowed 180 grams of rice a day. Deadly purges were conducted to eliminate remnants of the old society, including monks, police, doctors, lawyers, teachers, ex-soldiers along with their families, and former government officials. His cruelty and madness knew no bounds. It took years for him to finally be put under house arrest by his peers and was never truly punished for his crimes against humanity. He died of a heart attack in 1998 following his arrest. So, yeah. And we're reaching our top 3. I bet you thought number 3 was gonna be number 1. Nope, there were worse people than him, believe. Number 4. Madame Lalaurie, Richard Cow, I hope I said your name right, but you recommended this. Richard, as soon as I saw this name, I totally face-palmed. I was like, of course! Why did I have a brain fart? Of course she should be on this list. This woman should never have existed. Slavery was already exploitive and cruel. That shouldn't have existed in the first place. And this woman brought it to a whole new level. She's on par with Bathory for me for sure. The best part about American Horror Story Covenant is we got to imagine that she got her comeuppance, because she never actually did. Delphine Lalaurie was a French aristocrat in New Orleans who exploited, tormented, and treated the slaves she owned viciously. Like she enjoyed it too. Others had suspicions of her cruelty, especially when a slave woman ran and jumped to her death because Lalaurie was chasing her. After that, she was forced to sell her slaves, but bought them back secretly through family members. But things really came to a head on April 10th, 1834, when authorities rescued a 70-year-old slave woman who was found chained to a stove. She had set the house on fire in order to escape her mistress, but instead led the men up to the top of the house where they found Lalaurie's medieval torment chamber. 7 slaves were tied and spiked with iron collars, and that was barely a scratch on the rest of the things she did. A town mob gathered outside the house, but she never faced any real punishment for her crimes as she fled New Orleans because her reputation was ruined. Whoop-de-doo. Number 3! Jim Jones. About a dozen of you requested Jim Jones, so here he is, and rightly so. The poster child for the phrase, all together now, don't drink the Kool-Aid. Cult leaders are the worst. Hint, if someone says they are the Messiah and that you should follow them blindly, just run. What makes this man so awful and so terrifying is just how effective he was at manipulating people. Jones was the leader of the People's Temple cult in San Francisco and led under the title the Prophet. The cult began in the 1950s, but later in the 1970s they came under scrutiny from the public. So he convinced his 1,000 followers to move to Guyana in order to set up a commune where they could all live peacefully. But that was the last thing on his mind. He confiscated their passports, all of their money, blackmailed and threatened their lives. So I guess now we know how he kept his followers. US Representative Leo Ryan went to the commune to investigate the claims of abuse, but was killed by Jones along with his 4 members. That same day, November 18th, 1978, the culmination of his leadership called the Jonestown Massacre occurred, where he ordered his followers to drink cyanide-laced punch, killing every single one of them. Get rid, Jim Jones, don't like you. Number 2, Kim Il-sung. Oh, let's hope no one in North Korea is keeping an eye on this channel, because today we have to talk about the Korean War, which means we have to talk about Kim Il-sung, which means somebody in North Korea right now is probably very upset about this. Kim Il-sung was directly responsible for the Korean War that separated North Korea and South Korea. After World War II, when Japan surrendered, Korea was split in half, the North occupied by the Soviets and the South by the US. Kim was appointed by the Soviets, aka Stalin, remember the first list, to the Provincial People's Committee. From there, Kim created the Democratic Republic of North Korea, where he developed a cult-like following, built up his military, eliminated his competitors, and by 1950 he announced to Mao Zedong, remember the first video, and Stalin that he was ready to unite Korea under communism. June 25th, 1950 he attacked South Korea, amounting to the deadly loss of over 3 million people. When the war ended in a stalemate, Sung was heartbroken, but he was still determined to rule. He enforced his communist regime, where all information came from the state, true or otherwise, and exaggerated and villainized anyone outside his territory. To ensure everyone behaved, whole families who spoke out against him would just disappear. He basically created a real-life 1984. That's what happened. Because of him, North Korea is what it is today, a nuclear bomb waiting to go off. But according to them, it's the other way around. What do you think? Let us know. Coming in at number 1, again, at least a dozen of you were like, this guy. There's at least one evil German World War II leader on this list, and we all know the reason. Again, nearly a dozen of you suggested him across both videos, so here we go. It was one thing for a soldier to come knocking at your door, but the SS struck a whole different kind of fear. Himmler was the reason why. Heinrich Himmler is one of Adolf's most famous henchmen and was the second most powerful man in the Third Reich. In April 1934, Himmler was appointed assistant chief to the Gestapo in Prussia, but made sure to spread his influence across the whole Reich. He was the mastermind behind the Purge, or the Night of the Long Knives, where any competitors of Adolf were eliminated by the SS. This secured the ruler's position, and Himmler went on to create the most powerful armed body in Germany. But above all, he was the one behind the conception and implementation of the so-called final solution, which resulted in the death of 6 million Jews. So, need I say more?
Countdown, we have the psychopath's behavior.
When I was the punisher, I was the one who decided punishment over the I was the one who spanked the
This interview features a man named Robert, who has been deemed a psychopath. In the interview, he talks about the crimes he has committed and his thought processes as he commits these crimes, or lack thereof. What's horrifying is how candidly he talks about this all, and how he's proud of his crimes. He also shows no shame or guilt.
I would tell myself, well, she's not going to be like that. She is going to be the perfect mate. And I told myself that.
Just then, he was talking about a young girl he took advantage of, and basically coerced her into having a relationship with him. You can tell he got a sense of pleasure while talking about what he did to that individual. It's very sickening.
I was grooming her to fit me. To fit me.
It's so creepy how he is so calm while talking about all of this. Again, he's gaining this sense of pleasure just thinking back to his crimes.
In our number 9 spot today, we have John Battaglia. John Battaglia is certainly quite a piece of work. On May 2nd, 2001, the mother of his 2 daughters dropped the girls off for their weekly visit with their father. Unfortunately, instead of having dinner like they were supposed to, John ended up killing the girls instead. I'm not going to go into any of the details of that because it is obviously an incredibly horrible situation, but he did do this while on the phone with the girl's mother, and he says that his dislike for her is the reason behind these killings. Whether that is true or not, I just want to make it absolutely clear that there is never a good enough reason to do something like this. After deliberating for just 19 minutes, the jury in his trial found him guilty of the highest charge, which is capital murder. On February 1st, 2018 at 9:40 p.m., John was executed by the state. John has always held up this act of the doting and devoted father, and hearing him talk about the girls is incredibly chilling. He talks about them with a sense of pride and love, like he didn't do one of the most evil things in the entire world.
In marriage, she'd stomach about 8 or 9 months, pregnant when she took that picture.
And when you think about that, like, what do you think about?
I mean, you think about your best little friend. Nicest little kid that you ever knew.
Also, how he continues to blame his ex-wife for the death of his children is pretty telling of just how messed up his mind really was.
She ruined my daughter's life, and she ruined my daughter.
I mean, do you feel like you were killing them to get back at your
I don't feel like I killed.
You what?
I don't feel like I killed.
Coming in at number 8, we have Susan Atkins.
But that we were instructed to go all the way down every house, hit every house on the
street?
On the street, yes.
And kill all the people in those houses?
Kill all the people in all those houses.
Susan Atkins was an American murderer and loyal member of the Manson cult. She participated in 8 killings, all under the order of Charles Manson. In the cult, she went by the name Sadie Mae Flutes, or Sexy Sadie. She also played a role in the killing of famous actress Sharon Tate. In this interview, Susan talks about the Tate murder.
And we drove to the house with instructions to kill everyone in the house.
From Charlie?
Yeah.
Now, what made people mad about this interview is they claim that Susan was trying to act like a victim. She was trying to gain sympathy to lessen her sentence.
The people in the house were all brought into the living room and tied up, and I remember that Wojtek Bakowski, I believe is his name, I had tied his hands with a towel and then was instructed to kill him.
Whether she has actual remorse or not, hearing her recount the night of this dark deed is very creepy. In our 7th spot, we have Bernard Giles.
Wife and daughter, and something hit you and you went,
no.
Today may be the day?
Every day may be the day.
Every day?
Every day may be the day.
In this interview, serial killer Bernard Giles recounts his first murder to Piers Morgan. It is so chilling to hear him talk in depth about what he did to Nancy Jerry. He told Morgan that he picked her up and drove her to a wooded area where he did the deed. What's scary is that out of all the people Morgan has interviewed, Bernard is the first one who didn't try to prove his innocence. He openly admits that he's guilty and has killed people. At the beginning of the interview, Morgan says, and I quote, "You are serving 5 life sentences for killing 5 young women. My first question is, did you kill those women?" And he calmly replies with, "Yes, sir, I did." This dude has no remorse and no emotions. He even admits to it. What a creepy dude.
In our number 6 spot today, we have Tommy Lynn Sells. Tommy Lynn Sells was an American serial killer who is responsible for 22 confirmed deaths, but authorities have said that they know there are more. One of the aspects that scares me the most while watching him talk about his crimes is how you can tell that he committed these acts because he wanted to and because he liked it.
It was the best feeling I ever had in my life. And the first time I killed somebody, it was such a rush. And it was just like that shot of dope. Every time I did it, it was that rush again.
There
There is no doubt that Tommy is an actual psychopath, but on December 31st in 1999, Tommy messed with the wrong girl. After severely injuring Crystal Searles, who he thought was dead, this incredible young girl was able to walk a quarter of a mile with a severed trachea to her neighbor's house, where they of course got her help. Crystal ended up surviving and gave such a good description of Tommy, and in the end was able to identify him to the authorities. Crystal not only survived her own absolute nightmare, but she most definitely saved who knows how many lives with her bravery. In watching Tommy talk about his crimes, there is clearly just a lack of emotion or an emptiness behind his eyes.
If I called you something that you didn't like, and you'd think about killing me?
Well, if we was in a fight and get your head down in the concrete, then, so be it, but...
What happens when my head goes down to the concrete?
Well, what do you think happens? It cracks like a coconut.
Tommy ended up being executed on April 3rd, 2014. In our number 5 spot today, we have Alex Enriquez. Alex Enriquez is more commonly known as the Bronx serial killer. Alex is convicted of killing 3 females from 1989 to 1990 and is currently serving 3 consecutive 25 years to life sentences. Alex has been incarcerated since the early 90s, but still to this day maintains that he was innocent. There wasn't an overwhelming amount of physical evidence in this case, but there was a detail that Alex gave to authorities in an interrogation that was true to the crime, but it was a fact that police didn't even know at the time, so how could Alex have possibly known this? A few years ago, Alex sat down with Piers Morgan for an interview where he of course claimed his innocence, while also telling some pretty confusing stories.
The bodies.
You gave them a particular piece of information.
Because they told me.
But they did not know. How could they tell you something they didn't know?
That's what they telling you.
They hadn't cleaned the garment, so they're lying too.
Do you really think they said the truth?
There was also a witness testimony from a man who saw and spoke to Alex at one of his crime scenes on the night that it was committed, and of course Alex had some excuse for why this was untrue.
Says he saw you there.
Do you believe that? Have you seen...
You tell me, were you there?
No, I wasn't there.
I'm not sure about you guys, but this part definitely gives me major OJ if I did it vibes. At the end of the day, maybe he did not commit these crimes, and it would of course be extremely tragic that he has been wrongly convicted, but if he did in fact commit these crimes, it's pretty unsettling that after all these years, he still just can't even admit it.
Number 4, Michael Swango. This one, the case of Michael Swango is not only horrifying because of what he did, but also because of how long it took for him to get caught and for it to stop. It's insane. A serial poisoner, Michael Swango, swindled and lied his way into the medical field, leaving a trail of bodies behind him. First of all, this man kept a scrapbook of car crashes and horrific accidents, and even admired the poisoning techniques used in concentration camps in World War II. Red flags went off all over the place during his training in medical school, with patients mysteriously dying every time they touched him. He was nicknamed 007 with the catchphrase "License to Kill," but nobody did anything. In one case, one of the survivors directly implicated him when she said he injected her with something right before she underwent violent seizures. But he was exonerated because the hospital didn't want the press. Ugh! Then he was hired again and again at several places and poisoned staff on 2 separate occasions, with first fried chicken and then donuts. He was caught, finally, sentenced to 5 years, released after 2 for unknown reasons, and then started working under aliases. He traveled to you can tell this makes me really mad. You can tell this makes me really mad because nobody did background checks. He traveled to Africa, and after a trail of bodies started turning up there, police found massive stores of poison in his home. Oh yeah, and before he left for Africa, he stole all of his girlfriend's money and she took her own life because of it. He was finally caught in 1997 and is serving 3 consecutive life sentences. Number 3, Hermann Goring. I don't know why he hasn't been on part 2 or 3, but he's here now. He was one of evil Charlie Chaplin's main henchmen, one of the leaders of the National Socialist Party. His role in organizing the police state in Germany and establishing concentration camps for corrective treatments is primarily what he's remembered for. And What a legacy. He was beside the German dictator since the very beginning and even participated in the party's first attempt to take over the German government in the failed Beer Hall Putsch. It was during that event that Göring was severely injured and developed an addiction to morphine for the rest of his life. Fun fact. But honestly, I don't care. He was awful. No pity for the guy, because you know what's also a fun fact? He organized the Night of the Long Knives, where he, along with the SS, assassinated 85 members of the political opposition. Yeah, he was so loved by the Führer that he was even declared his successor until he tried to take the position early in 1939 and was placed under house arrest by the Führer. Göring stood trial and was condemned to death after the war, though he took his own life via cyanide the night before his execution. So we never really got the full justice, but we almost got there. Okay, number 2. I've done 6 of these lists, and you'd think I'd become numb to it, kind of at this point, but when I read about this man, I felt like I'd be kicked in the stomach, so fair warning. It seems as though the evil experiments in German World War II camps never ends. Karl Kahlberg was a gynecologist who, prior to the war, was actually trying to help infertile women conceive. You may want to stop here if this is a sensitive subject for you. As you can guess, he did the opposite as soon as he landed in the concentration camps. He joined the National Socialist Party in 1938. He soon approached another evil man, Heinrich Himmler, who we've talked about in previous videos, and requested permission to experiment on sterilization procedures. He wanted to see if there was a way to perform sterilization on a large group of people in a short amount of time. He injected thousands of women with toxins without anesthesia, which resulted in extreme pain and most often death. Sometimes he would even take their lives just so he would have a cadaver to research. His place of work was Auschwitz, and then after the Soviets moved in, he moved to Ravensbrück concentration camp. Finally, he was caught by the Soviets and sentenced to 25 years in prison. He was soon released to stand trial in Germany, but he died before he could be sentenced in 1957. Number 1. Lenin. The worse, the better. Vladimir Lenin is one of the most controversial people on this list. A kind of inspirational tyrant, Vladimir Lenin founded the Russian Communist Party, led the Bolshevik Revolution, and was the mind behind the Soviet state. He has in fact been regarded as one of the greatest revolutionary leaders in history, so like why the heck is he on this list? Lenin's Soviet Union led the way for people such as Joseph Stalin to oppress and brutalize their own people by establishing a society that suffocated freedom. One of the most horrific events he was responsible for was the Red Terror. The Red Terror was a state-sponsored wave of cutthroat brutality that spanned from September 1918 until 1922. In an attempt to maintain control, Lenin's Bolsheviks used terror to silence any opposition. Thousands, even millions potentially, were forced into concentration camps, which ended in their execution. Lenin's foundation of state-sanctioned violence would lead to millions of deaths throughout his leadership, and of course, his predecessors, especially Joseph Stalin. Number 10. Elizabeth Bathory. I remember one time seeing a theater production where they kind of glorified this woman, and I was like, you realize what she did, right? Bathory was one of the most evil women to ever live on the planet Earth, period. It wasn't just how many people she killed, but how she did it. Like Vlad the Impaler, she is being compared to a real-life vampire and is even from the same area. She was born on August 7th, a Leo, like me. I swear we're not all crazy. August 7th, 1560, in a prominent Hungarian noble family, making her practically untouchable. She married a war hero named Count Franz Nadazny, I probably butchered that, sorry, but so did she, who was suspected of gifting Bloody Lizzie with the skills she used to kill. After she died, Bathory became obsessed with immortality, supposedly when one of her servants accidentally spilled blood on her and her skin appeared younger. Bathory then began her mission of horror, luring over 650 young virgin women to her palace and brutally taking their lives. She was even bold enough to lure daughters of nobility. Before draining them of their blood, she would slice, stab, sew their mouths shut, leave them out in the cold, cover them in honey so bees would sting them, let her dogs tear at their flesh, and she herself would bite off skin from their face and other intimate parts, shall we say. When she was satisfied, her servants drained the blood into a bath. When she was finally caught, 3 of her servants were executed, but she was locked away in a tower for the rest of her days, forced to rot away. I feel like that wasn't good enough, you know? That's just not good enough. She was probably able to roam around the castle too, like it wasn't a big deal. Like I said, untouchable. Number 9, Maximilien Robespierre. As one of our commenters said in part 1, Wes Gunton said, power corrupts the good too, not just the evil. Good quote, man. Nice. Maximilien Robespierre started out with good intentions before he lost his head. You can look at the French Revolution through two lenses. One is like, yay, they got rid of an idiot king, that's so good. And then the other lens is, oh my god, there's so much blood everywhere. Why are there so many heads rolling around? It was nuts. Like, it was not a good time, and I don't think it was okay at all. And that's all to do with Maximilian. After Marie Antoinette and Louis XVI were beheaded in 1793, Maximilian continued the bloodbath without mercy. Ironically, he was the head of the Committee for Public Safety. But accused many members of the National Convention of treasonous and unrevolutionary activities just like willy-nilly. He was like, you're a traitor, you're a traitor. In less than a year, 300,000 people were arrested, 10,000 died in prison, and 17,000 people were guillotined. So many heads! One by one he sent them all to the guillotine until he eventually was elected the president of the National Convention. Within 6 days of being president, he passed a law that suspended the right to a public trial and to legal assistance, and by the end of that month, 1,400 people were guillotined. Talk about trigger happy. Finally, the right and the left reunited in order to overthrow Robespierre in order to destroy the vicious dictatorship he established. Looks like he was too busy forging ahead with his plans that he eventually lost his own. Number 8. You also said, I think in the comments, that you wanted this guy on this list, so we're here. This list is very much for you, so number 8, Vlad the Impaler. Good old Vlad. Oh man, he's been romanticized a little bit as well, I think, as the OG Dracula, but trust me, with that beard and that temper, he was about as sexy as a hot dog dressed as a salsa dancer. Whatever you imagine Dracula could do, what he did was worse. A lot of the awful things that he did were fed by a penchant for revenge, but still, it must take a certain kind of person to do what he did. And there's plenty more that I just didn't have time to say in this video, so let me know if you just want me to do a list about Vlad. I'll do it. At a young age, Vlad was shipped off to be raised by Turks, which resulted in a brutal upbringing. On top of that, his entire family was killed during a coup, leading young Vlad to plot his revenge. One of the first things he did as a ruler was hold a massive banquet in the guise of making peace with his enemies, lulling them into a false sense of security with a cup of wine, you know? That is before he announced that they would be having shish kebabs for dinner. They were the entree. Most of his guests were stabbed to death while others were impaled on stakes while they were alive. Quite literally, like, hey Vlad, how do you like your steak? Rare. Anyways, all the while Vlad watched. Some even say he let the blood drip into his goblet and continued to drink from it. Number 7, Ivan the Terrible. To have a name like that, you must have done something really, really bad. Or a few things very bad. Ivan the Terrible, or Ivan IV as he was formerly known, was the crown prince of Moscow. It's instances like these that just highlights why monarchy is just such a bad idea. You know, you just never know what's gonna pop out and have a crown put on its head one day. This guy gave off major Joffrey vibes from the start. When he was just 13, he ordered the arrest of Prince Andrew Shusky so he could feed him to his ravenous dogs. Joffrey or Ramsay? Both. Let's say both. He also tortured animals for fun, and if you've been with this channel for a long time, you know what that means. But for a while there, love seemed to have subdued him, for after he married Anastasia Romanova, he was relatively calm for about 13 years until the day she and her son fell ill and died. The reign of terror resurfaced with a vengeance. He formed the notorious Opreninki, a league of soldiers clad in black ordered to murder anyone they deemed traitors to God, even barging into churches during mass. Back at the castle, Ivan engaged in some pretty sadistic acts of sexual nature of both men and women, and married a sum of 8 times, with each wife mysteriously drowning or being sent away to convents. Yeah, he even beat to death his eldest son and his wife, who was pregnant at the time. Needless to say, the world was glad when he left it, though Russia wouldn't recover from years of disarray until Peter the Great took over 100 years later. Rough. Number 6, Bloody Mary. And I'm not talking about the one you see in the mirror, okay? This is an entirely different one. This is like the OG. You don't get bloody put in front of your name for nothing. Rulers loved to use religion as an excuse to kill mass amounts of people. I mean, people still like doing that today for some reason. Anyways, which is why Mary I of England earned the title she did. When her father Henry VIII created the Church of England in order to divorce her mother Catherine so he could marry Anne Boleyn, this essentially bastardized Mary due to the allegations of incest he made against her mother, changing her life for the worse. She was forbidden to see her parents and stripped of her title as princess, but when Anne died, Mary took a lot of convincing to rejoin the court and was named heir to the throne, but she never saw her dad really as the head of the church. She was still a devout Catholic. There are a lot more details, but with the hatred she bore her father when she finally became queen, Mary did everything she could to convert England back to Catholicism and married Philip of Spain. Over the next 3 years, she burned hundreds upon hundreds of Protestants at the stake. Like, again, like why can't you just kill them? If you want them dead, why do you have to torture them? I don't know. Ugh. Her bloody, disillusioned tirade appeared to have no end in sight, but after she lost a devastating war and Philip abandoned her, Mary soon fell ill and died, leaving all her Catholic dreams behind her. Thankfully, good old Queen Bess was on the sidelines, so Mary's bloody rampage ended when she did, so love Queen Elizabeth, she was great. Anyways.
In our fourth spot we have Ed Kemper. I featured Ed in part 2 of this series, but I think this other interview he did was worse than the first one. So Ed Kemper, or Big Ed, is an American serial killer who took the lives of 10 individuals. This reign started back in 1964, when he took the lives of his grandparents. And he said he did it just to see what killing felt like. This hour-and-a-half interview was filmed in 1991 when Ed was 42 years old. I think what makes this so disturbing is how smart he is.
Extended period of time, and then in the early 80s they came up with this differentiation called serial killing, which was living 2 lives basically. If one orients to the negative side of that living, he would say this person was living a cover life.
He's very well spoken, and in the interview he went on to describe his tendencies and why he thinks he became a killer, and how he thinks young people need to be supported so they don't end up like him.
Getting youngsters like that help to where they can find themselves and they can find value in themselves and they can find value in interacting with others, and they go in a different direction than what I did.
It's crazy and creepy. Like, this dude is too smart for his own good. In our third spot we have Jodi Arias. On June 4th, 2008, Jodi Arias took the life of her boyfriend Travis Alexander. He was in the shower at the time of his death. It's really brutal what she did to him. After she did the deed, she took photos of him on her camera and then threw it in the washing machine as an attempt to get rid of evidence. But upon investigating, her DNA, among other things, were found at the crime scene and she was arrested. So this interview was conducted after her trial. People were outraged by the number of lies she tells in this interview.
Was it unexpected, do you think, this verdict?
It was unexpected. For me, yes, because there was no premeditation on my part. I can see how things look that way, but I didn't expect the premeditation. I could see maybe the felony murder because of how the law is written.
She claims the murder wasn't premeditated, but her actions say otherwise. She had it all planned out. She took his life and then dyed her hair, rented a car, cleaned up the crime scene, and fled. In the interview, she also tries to gain sympathy from the watchers. You can tell she's putting on a face of sorrow. You even see her clock the camera, and then when she realizes she's being recorded, that's when that whole act began. It's really scary and dark.
In our number 2 spot today we have Ted Bundy. If you know anything about true crime, you most definitely have heard of one of the most famous killers of all time, Ted Bundy. Ted killed upwards of 30 people during his crime spree in the 1970s. Most interviews with Ted are extremely well known, but there is one interview that is very disturbing that is not quite as popular as the others. In this interview, he is talking about taking the life of 18-year-old student Georgianne Hawkins. The chilling part of it is how he talks about things just so matter-of-factly, like it's a casual conversation between friends and not him describing the horrific acts that he committed.
She was quite lucid talking about things. It's funny, it's not funny, but it's odd the kinds of things people say under those circumstances. She had a Spanish test the next day and she thought that I had taken her to helped tutor me for a Spanish test.
After that clip, this interview unfortunately gets even more disturbing as he begins whispering some more terrifying details. When I first saw this interview, I was listening through headphones, and you guys, the chill you get from having an absolute monster whispering in your ear is truly incomparable.
The Hawkins girl's head was severed and taken up the road about 25 to 50 yards and buried in a location about 10 yards west of the road on a rocky hillside.
After that horrible whispering part, he continues on with the rest of the details of that day in the same casual conversation tone that we heard before. If it wasn't obvious before, after listening to this specific interview, it is very clear just how disturbing Ted Bundy really was. In our number 1 spot today, we have Michael Turner. In 2008, Michael Turner fatally shot his wife as she was about to end their relationship and also was planning to turn him into the authorities. In the process of this terrible crime, he also injured 2 of their. As far as I know, the injuries to the were accidental, but this obviously does not take away from the terrible thing that he did, as well as the fact of that is literally one of the many reasons why you shouldn't kill someone. In a jailhouse interview, Michael gives a chilling account of what happened on that day, as well as discussing intention and motive. There is a part where he is discussing how he loves his kids and how they love him.
You say you love your kids.
Man, as you see, I've been there for them since I've been home from prison. Hell yeah, I love my kids. And my kids love me, you hear me? I don't know if they still do. But I know my son told me shit before he left. Before I left the house, he told me shit, Daddy, he still love me. You know what I'm saying?
But then later, when asked about how he could love his kids and then harm their mom, he gives quite an answer.
You say you love your kids, but you killed their mama.
So what?
And you're going to jail.
So what?
So you left them alone.
You what?
You left them alone.
Left them alone?
Yeah.
They got grandparents, they got other people who love them. You know, it don't matter. They mama up. You know what I'm saying?
It honestly is this callous disregard for the life that he took, as well as the effect this whole situation will have on his kid's life, that is just absolutely unfathomable to me.
Number 10, Tamerlane the Great. How about Tamerlane the not great, dude? Oh, it's so bad. Tamerlane was a great conqueror of the Turks who was infamous for building a tower of skulls. This man will make you thankful for democracy, or just like everything we have today, if you weren't already. He ruled around 40 years until he died in 1405 CE. He was a huge fan of Genghis Khan and he believed he was his descendant. He wasn't directly on his father's side, but he kind of was. And based on what we know of Genghis Khan, not hard to believe he had a lot of kids. To pay homage to his great-grandfather, he built an empire that stretched across Russia, the Mediterranean, and India. No mercy was his motto, annihilating whole cities in one fell sweep. He burned down a mosque in Damascus with people still inside just to heighten the fear. One of the most gruesome things he ever did was behead over 90,000 people, enough to build 100 towers of decaying skulls. Right? Unlike his idol Genghis Khan, his brutal campaign wasn't about protecting trade routes and flanks, but more about, bragging rights and power. The Timurid Empire didn't survive for very long because they never put in any governmental structures after they destroyed their territory, so it's kind of like once you just conquer somewhere, you have to take care of it after, but he didn't. In other words, he may have conquered many places, but he never truly ruled after he destroyed them. He killed around 19 million people, probably more, during his conquests and skinned alive any who wouldn't convert to Islam. Whew! Vicious! Vicious! Number 9, Issei Sagawa. Man, I can't believe this dude is just walking around free. It really freaks me out. I don't want to forget this man exists at all, so if I ever see him, I can run in the opposite direction, and as should you. In 1981, Sagawa took the life of Renee Hartveld and then he ate her. Yeah. He took 2 days to consume her, and apparently this crime had fulfilled a lifelong desire for Sagawa. He did try to get diagnosed by a psychiatrist who actually declared him highly dangerous, but because he was the son of a rich Japanese businessman, rather than getting help, his father sent him to school in suborn France. Issei apparently had the desire when he saw his classmates' thighs while at school and he thought they looked delicious. Ugh. While at school in France, he finally met his target, Renee. The two became friends, well, on her end. She had no idea what was about to happen. Thankfully, she wouldn't have realized what was about to happen as he shot her in the back, which is a really small mercy. I'm glad she wasn't like cognizant. He selected her because of her youth and beauty, and Issei wanted to absorb her energy so he wouldn't be as weak. He packed up what was left of her corpse into a suitcase and took a cab over to a park and dropped them off. But bystanders saw the blood leaking and called the police. He admitted it, was declared insane, as he already was, deported back to Japan where he was supposed to stay in a mental institution, but they declared him sane, and since the case was dropped in France, he only had to stay for 15 months in the institution. And he is now free, walks the streets, and says he still has the same desires. Number 8. The killer actor. A black mark on the profession, no doubt. Ramiro Artaida was so set on revenge and coercion that he went to acting school so he could be better at it, right? Between 1937 and 1939, Ramiro was responsible for the gruesome deaths of over 8 women. His thing was that he would create characters in order to lure women to secluded areas. His go-tos were a monk, a film producer, and a professor. The motivation behind his killing spree was related to the accusation made against him years before. Ramiro was engaged to be married, and he came from a wealthy estate. He was accused of killing his older brother in order to ensure that the estate passed solely to him, and it was due to these accusations that his fiancée left him, but nothing was proven. Distraught, he fled Bolivia and studied drama in the US, only to return and exact revenge on any women who looked like his ex. Like, talk about a dramatic breakup. Thankfully, he was caught and sentenced to death in 1939. Yikes. Number 7. The Great Blood Sorceress. What a name, right? Next up, we have Magdalena Solis, who unfortunately earned the bad nickname of the Great Blood Sorceress. Why was this woman so evil? Well, she was a cult leader who manipulated and tormented her followers due to her warped sense of self. A religious fanatic with an already delusional sense of who she was, she joined the Santos Cayetano Hernandez cult in 1963 in Mexico. She traveled with the cult to Yerba Buena, a town with a tiny population of only 50 people, all sadly destitute and poor. She took severe advantage of the people, convincing them that she was the reincarnation of an Aztec goddess. Okay? I don't know if you know anything about the Aztec tradition, but whoa. The brothers who founded the group knew it was fake, but Magdalena even sold herself on the charade. She was responsible for 8 confirmed deaths, though probably more. They died due to the gruesome ritual sacrifices she performed on them. Like, think Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones, like that. That's exactly what she did. Ugh! This woman would torment and beat them, then take out their hearts and drink their blood. Like, ugh! Just horrendous. I hate this. It's just gross. Don't join cults. Anyways. Number 6. Delphine Lalaurie. It was only a matter of time before Delphine Lalaurie made it onto this list, and I know you've been waiting. Lalaurie first caused suspicion over her cruelty when a servant girl threw herself off of a balcony whilst being chased by Lalaurie. But the real horrors were revealed when rescuers found a 70-year-old slave woman chained to the stove during a house fire. The woman had set the fire herself and tried to take her own life for fear her punishment would lead her to the attic. When authorities ventured up to the attic themselves, they saw several bodies of servants mutilated and hung by the neck. Needless to say, the whole town was set ablaze after that with anger. A mob surrounded the Lalaurie mansion with the desire of confronting and punishing the cruel woman, but she had disappeared. To this day, no one knows what happened to her. I mean, she's definitely dead. She was socially ruined, but as to where and how, no one knows. But she was never properly punished for her crimes. Number 5. Jeff Davis 8. Jennings, Louisiana has a population around 10,000 people, probably more now. So for 8 women to go missing only to reappear dead in swamps and ponds around the city within 5 years, oof, it would definitely be a shock. But the case remains open to this day, which makes whomever is behind it someone you never want to cross. But it gets creepier than that because it could be more than one. The woman lived in the same areas, and similarly to other cases, they had histories of street work and criminal activity. They all died of the same cause, asphyxiation, which clearly links them together, but for over a decade, no solid suspect has ever been nailed down. The lack of suspects have led to allegations of misconduct by law enforcement, and there was even a controversial book that was released accusing members of the police force of being clients of the women. Ethan Brown was the reporter who wrote the book and continues to say that the case was mishandled after staff were fired for speaking up. There are a lot of seedy details involving this investigation that clearly make it seem like a cover-up, so is it one person who should be feared, or has one rotten apple spoiled the whole bunch? Either way, I hope one day someone puts whoever is behind this behind bars for good. Number 4, Route 8. I wish wooded areas could be a place of peace and fantasy, but too many criminals have left their bloody mark. Route 8 south of Torrington, Connecticut is one such area, a forest just off the road that has served as a nefarious dumping ground for evil people. Between 1988 to 2004, 4 young women were found and they were all from Waterbury, which connected them. Now, this isn't one of the cases the police had no suspects for, which is a good thing, but instead they had 3 and they are no closer to narrowing them down. All of them are thankfully in jail for other charges. Richard W. Rogers is one, in prison for taking the lives of 2 men, though he primarily attacked gay men, so perhaps not him. The second is Steve Hayes, in jail for taking the life of Jennifer Hawk Petite and her 2 daughters during a home invasion. However, he is considered a pathological liar. And then the third is none other than William Devon Howell. Yup, the guy we mentioned before. Remember how I mentioned there are probably more victims? Well, Exhibit C. However, each suspect has a hole in the case, so it could very well be that the criminal isn't behind bars yet. So who should we really be afraid of? And coming up to our top 3, if you're liking this video so far, give us a like, follow, comment, do your thing. You know what we love, and we love you for it. So let's continue without further ado. Number 3, the smiley face killers. Whoever is behind this case is probably one of the most evil people in the world. These crimes are so disturbing that they have even bred conspiracies. Over a 20-year span, over 45 college-aged men have all drowned while intoxicated. Even more strange is that they all occurred in 11 different states. Despite the distances, investigators believe that the deaths are connected by not one but several people. The one big thing that connects them and feeds this theory are the disturbing smiley faces that are painted near the crime scenes. At least 12 of the men have this in common. Investigators believe that they are abducted, killed, and then disposed of in water, giving the impression that they drowned. Does anyone else think it is a bit strange to connect all the deaths? Potentially, but beyond the creepy smiles, the party drug has been found in their systems, as well as the men are all in the same category: white, athletic, successful, and popular. Whether or not you believe the crimes are connected, these men aren't ending up dead by themselves, and none of their cases are closed, so who is behind it? And number 2, the vanishing women. Chillicothe is a small town in Ohio where evil seems to be at work. The killer is primarily targeting women of the night and those who recreationally use heavy drugs. Between 2014 and 2015, several of these women disappeared and only 4 were found dead, while 2 more are still yet to be discovered. Only 1 man has been brought to justice over one of the crimes, but he could not be linked to the others. But that's the scariest part. This may not be a case of one person being evil, but of several. According to the June 2015 Cleveland Plain Dealer Report, updated in 2019, the town leaders are convinced that the drugs and related issues may play a role in the crime. Police are concerned that this could be a case of trafficking that is preying on women in desperate situations. Many of the women knew each other, work in the same places, which lends more fuel to this idea. Last but not least, man unknown. This last perpetrator still remains on the loose. We wish we could say that these kinds of crimes died in the 70s, like all the rest of them, but sadly that's not the case. In Phoenix, Arizona, there's a terror plaguing the streets. This horrific criminal has taken the lives of 7 people and injured so many with a semi-automatic shotgun. They shoot at random and have no specific target in mind. It could be old, young, male, female, whatever. So needless to say, people in Phoenix are double locking their doors. The criminal seems to primarily target the Latino Maryville neighborhood, but so far police have no leads on who could be the killer. In June, the shooter fired over 30 times where Malia Ellis, her mom Stephanie, and family friend Angela Linner were sitting. Sadly, they all passed away. The only description they have of him, and this is it: light-skinned Latino or white man in his 20s. Authorities are offering a 30 grand reward for any information that leads to the arrest, but so far nothing. Wrong with the Boston Strangler. Yeah, you know where this is going. On January 18th, 1967, Albert DeSalvo was convicted and confessed to be the Boston Strangler, though some people believe he wasn't the only one. Due to inconsistencies in the trial, many believe that there was someone else involved. Either way, whoever he was, the Boston Strangler was an awful person. The perpetrator somehow managed to talk his way into women's apartments despite warnings from the media. Women all across Boston were arming themselves, and yet still he found his victims. I don't need to go into detail, but based on his name I think you know how he took their lives. And then some. From June 14th, 1962 to January 4th, 1964, he killed 13 people, abusing the bodies in ways that would haunt your nightmares. So yeah, there's clear why he's on this list. And that's number 10. Get ready. Number 9, Fareed Fatah. This is horrendous. This is absolutely horrendous. Imagine being told that you were sick and dying and then finding out later it was all a lie. Fareed delivered the news to over 500 people, what's supposed to be what every doctor dreads to say, that they were sick and dying. He sent them through various rounds of chemotherapy, radiation, you name it. The thing is, they weren't sick to begin with. Fareed had figured out that he could make millions of dollars off of people participating in these treatments. So while he moved into his $1 million mansion, his healthy patients suffered horrific side effects from the medications such as losing their teeth, hair, their strength, etc. If you ever seen anybody go through cancer treatment, you know it's not amazing at all. His genuinely sick patients died with no care, while his healthy ones got sicker and sicker and eventually just ended up being sick. He would give them hope that they were getting better just to keep them stuffing his pockets. The families also suffered with the impending death of their family members, all for nothing. Finally, the truth came out due to information from a suspicious colleague and authorities caught up to him. Prosecutors sought an 175-year sentence but settled with 45. Good riddance. And also what really pisses me off about this one is that he got away with it for so long and there was no criticism over like 500 people. That's a lot of people. Ugh, bothers me so much. Let's keep going. Number 8. This one's a little controversial. Oliver Cromwell. Yeah, I know. I don't know. I feel like I'm risky, you know what I mean? He wasn't a very nice guy. Sure, he did some good, but he decimated a lot of people and he abolished theater, which is a big no in my books. After the Civil War, Cromwell took over as protector of England. For most of his rule, he was pretty much viewed as a dictator. Some believe that he saved democracy, but his means of getting there were brutal and unrelenting. In September 1649, Cromwell's men entered the town of Drogheda and took the lives of everyone they found, which means around 3,500 innocent people died. He acted as God's executioner, his contempt for Catholics feeding the attacks. He was quite brutal to Ireland. Many historians accuse him of ethnic cleansing, especially since a month after Drogheda, he did the same thing to Wexford. Eventually, he was overthrown by Charles II and his republic failed. And there is some missing nuance, I will admit, so if you want to go ahead and correct me in the comments or go into a debate, go for it. Why not? But there was quite a bit of bad and we can't really ignore that. Not a nice guy. Number 7, Marshall Applewhite. Now we have our first cult leader. Woo! Just kidding, not an appropriate response considering how awful he was. Marshall Applewhite was an infamous leader of the Heaven's Gate cult. His first arrest was a little tame. He was arrested when he failed to return a car that he rented. His reason was that he was divinely authorized to own the car. He had some pretty extravagant disillusions and an inflated perspective of self, as cult leaders often do. He manipulated several people to join his cult and participate in a procedure requiring surgical castration. He made everyone wear baggy clothes and was convinced that they were waiting for a UFO to arrive. The Haley Bob comet was the signal and Applewhite organized a Last Supper of sorts. They all went to a restaurant and ordered the same thing: turkey pot pie, cheesecake, blueberries, and iced tea. Not my choice, honestly. Finally, on March 21st, when the comet was days out, he manipulated 30 people to take their own lives. Number 6, The Serpent. I'm a big fan of Jenna Coleman, who played Clara in Doctor Who, and when she showed up in the new Netflix show The Serpent, I was in. But then I was horrified to learn that it was about a real human that existed, and I really wish they didn't. Charles Sobrage, along with his girlfriend Marie-Andre Leclerc, committed a spree of crimes along what was called the Hippie Trail. During the 1970s, Vietnamese, Indian, Frenchmen lured over a dozen tourists into a false sense of security before taking their lives. He preyed upon travelers in India, Nepal, and Thailand by spiking their drinks, food, stealing their valuables and identities before brutally making them disappear. He became the subject of a massive Interpol manhunt in 1976 after a junior diplomat in Bangkok started to catch on. If his crimes were anywhere as brutal as they were hinted at in the show, I certainly wish he never existed. Thankfully, he continues to serve a life sentence to this day.
We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Harold Shipman. Harold Shipman was an English doctor and serial killer. It was discovered that he took the lives of a number of patients under his care, his total number of victims being around 250. Imagine that. You go to a hospital thinking that they're gonna save you, but instead end up being the cause of your death. Now, during Harold's police interrogations, he refused to speak and refused to look at any piece of evidence that they had against him. In particular, he would not look at the photos of his victims.
Lily Crossley, if you'd like to look at that, just for the benefit of the tape. Dr. Shipman's eyes are closed and he didn't look at the photograph at all. Can you remember Lily Crossley at all? Okay, no answer.
Now, Shipman was obviously doing this so he wouldn't give anything away. But in fact, his very actions in this interview gave away everything. Investigators noticed that when they presented the victim's image in front of him, he would freeze and stop breathing for 9 seconds. So they immediately knew that there's something up with him.
That's Elizabeth Pierce. The three ladies there, it's the elderly lady dressed in black. For the benefit of the tape, Dr. Shipman's eyes are closed and he did not look at.
He doesn't breathe for 9 seconds after they said her name. So Elizabeth Pierce, that name is a problem for him. Something about that victim is causing his body stress, and that is one of the reasons why police knew he had done these horrific crimes. Moving on, at number 4 we have Colin Norris. Colin Norris was a nurse that was found guilty of taking the lives of 4 of his elderly patients. He would do so by injecting them with lethal doses of insulin. During his interrogation, he was adamant that he was not guilty.
You were also injecting a patient with insulin.
No, I wasn't. You're sitting there saying, you suspect, you presume, you blah blah blah.
Both men preyed on people they'd been trusted to look after.
So they brought him in for the murder of Ethel Hall. He was the last person who had been with Ethel before she slipped into a coma and sadly passed away.
Obviously, if somebody was going to kill someone, they wouldn't leave their signature, would they?
What do you mean by that?
To say that they were there. I was doing my job.
You were doing your job?
Yeah.
But at the same time, you were also injecting a patient with insulin.
No, I wasn't.
He then goes on to try and convince them why he is innocent. So they accused him of injecting her with insulin. Well, this is what he had to say in his defense.
It would have, if you say, like, somebody came and injected me with that, I would say to somebody, wait a minute, what are you doing? Even when you're giving patients their, like, morphine for through the night or whatever, when you inject them, they do make a noise because, I mean, have you ever been injected with anything? So somebody would have noticed a noise from the patient. Or if the patient was asleep, they would have certainly woke up if somebody went and injected.
The worst part is when he slipped up and literally told the interrogators that he doesn't like old people, and that's basically why he committed these crimes.
Norris admitted finding elderly patients challenging.
The smells.
The smells?
Mm-hmm. I couldn't get used to the smells. When I was bathing female patients, having to wash them down below, I found it difficult to start with, especially if they were like ages with my gran.
That just makes me sick. He was there to look after the elderly and did the exact opposite. In our 3rd spot we have Eileen Wuornos. Eileen Wuornos is often considered the first female serial killer. She was found guilty of taking the lives of 7 men. This is the last interview of her before she received the death penalty.
You know, I was just wondering how you're going to be, you know, at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Are you prepared?
I'm prepared. I'm all right with it.
At this point, Eileen was proud of her murders. She didn't want to die, but she had accepted her fate. At one point, she claimed she couldn't stand being on death row any longer since she had already been there for 10 years. At this point, she just wanted to die.
Prepared yourself for tomorrow morning.
I'm all right with it. Yeah, I'm ready to go. Hey, I was tortured at BCI. They had the intercom on in the room, and they kept lying that it wasn't on, and they were using sonic pressure on my head since 1997.
This seemed to be true to Eileen. Being locked away, she started to grow paranoid. She thought that the people making her food were spitting in it, and that she was being attacked by a sonic weapon, aka the intercom. Anyways, let's move on.
What more is there to say about the cops? What more do you want to say about the cops?
A lot of stuff. Did you know that they were surveilling me before I killed? And then I knew it? Then I know that the cops knew who I was. After Richard Mallory died, I left prints everywhere, and they covered it up. and let me kill the rest of those guys to turn me into a serial killer.
If this is true, then this is incredibly messed up. And then when she gets mad, it's actually really scary.
You killed 7 men.
Yes, you
and
did.
I'm asking you, what got you to kill the 7
And
men?
I'm telling you because the cops let me keep killing them, Nick. Don't you get it? Ladder climbs, the election, everything else. I got fifth finger in all your faces. Thanks a lot. You're inhuman. You're an inhumane bunch of and you're gonna get nuked in the end. And pretty soon it's coming.
It got intense. I think her facial expressions and wide eyes make it 10 times scarier. Like if I was that interviewer, I would have peed my pants. In our second spot today, we have Paul Bernardo. Paul Bernardo is a Canadian serial killer who, along with his partner Karla Homolka, carried out a number of horrific crimes in Scarborough, Ontario. This is footage from his interview with Toronto police detectives.
Did you kill Elizabeth Bain on June the 19th, 1990?
Well, it's a loaded question. I mean, are we going to go back and go through the time sequence of what happened in my life? I mean, I could just give a yes or no answer, but you know, there's a lot of issues about that.
In a way, he reminds me of Ted Bundy, constantly tiptoeing around the questions, saying what he thinks they want to hear, and trying to outsmart them.
Hey, did you kill this person? I mean, well, you're saying I'm lying here, here, and here. I could say, no, I didn't. But, I mean, you already said I'm lying here with the PO you're saying.
Okay, I'm not saying anything about who's lying. I'm simply.
And I've given you directions to go to find the truth.
Right.
No one's done that.
And I've.
Also, take in how he is smiling throughout this, like it's fun games for him. It makes me sick. He's literally having fun with this all. And in our number one spot today, we have Karla Homolka. Now, we talked about her counterpart, Paul, so it's only fair that we talk about Karla herself. Basically, what happened is that Karla confessed to her roles in the murders and testified against Paul to get out of a harsher sentence. In this interview, she puts on an innocent act and tries to blame Paul for everything that they did.
He kept on pushing and pushing and pushing, and finally I said, okay.
She tried to make it seem like she was a victim and being controlled by Paul.
If I didn't turn the water tap off completely, he'd hit me. If I didn't say the right thing, he'd hit me. He held knives to my throat. He told me I better watch my back. He said, always watch your back with me.
From our understanding, this was her strategy to pin the blame all on him so she could get away with the murders.
We have Pope Alexander VI, aka the Borgias. If you want power, don't bother trying to be a king. Becoming the Pope is much more lucrative. Hesitate to put him on this list was that if he didn't exist, we wouldn't have the Borgias, which was a great TV show. Anything with Jeremy Irons, I am in. But this guy, along with his whole family, were about as corrupt as they come, to the point where we can't help but be like a little bit impressed. He achieved the papacy through nepotism and bribery, and then continued to make his family the most powerful in the world wherever he could. His children Cesare and Lucrezia Borgia were notorious for their illicit affairs and even murder, with Lucrezia being referred to at one time as the Black Widow of Rome. Though her father often used her as a pawn, he married off to rich merchants, and then when their usefulness expired, he claimed the marriage to be null and void so he could just do the whole thing again. He also allegedly held massive orgies and challenged those in his company to see who could do the most of it. But worst of all is this, something called the Inter Caetera, a papal bill he issued that authorized Spain and Portugal to colonize and enslave the Americas and Africa. So I guess we all know why he's on this list, besides all the rest. Number 9. The Purdue family. Speaking of families, right? Wow. One bad apple spoils the whole bunch, and that is definitely the case with the Purdue family. This family conned their way to becoming the richest family in America, taking the lives of over 200,000 people without even lifting a finger. The Sackler family accumulated their $13 billion net worth when their private company called Purdue Pharma developed a revolutionary new drug called Oxycontin. Their slogan was the drug to start with and stay with, and they assured millions that it was safe to use. OxyContin contains something called oxycodone, which was a relative to another very deadly drug featured very strongly in the film called Trainspotting. Ever heard of Chasing the Dragon? But it was 2 times as powerful as morphine, and what a breakthrough for pain management. And they couldn't help the $35 billion it made for Purdue Pharma. They continued to market OxyContin as a safe drug to use, but instead, they caused the opioid crisis in the 1990s. Good job, Big Pharma. Mark Lepine. The École Polytechnique was one of the most horrific acts of hate ever performed in Canada. After a roller coaster ride academically, Mark Lepine was denied entry into Montreal's École Polytechnique engineering program. But no one knew that this would be the straw that broke the camel's back. On December 6, 1989, Mark walked onto the campus with a concealed semi-automatic weapon. Once inside, he separated the men and the women and then opened fire on all the women while shouting, "You're all feminists." He then ran into the hall, shooting any woman within his sight. He then took his own life, and in the note that he left, he blamed feminists for ruining his life and included a list of 19 more feminists he should have killed if he hadn't run out of time. Mark Lepine walked into the school with the intention of killing every single female student in that school just because he was mad that they wanted to be engineers. What is known as the Montreal Massacre shook the nation and became known as one of the deadliest shootings ever to happen in Canada. We wish we could forget the man, but let us always remember the woman who died. Number 7. Robert Pickton. I hate him so much. Here we have another Canadian serial named Robert Pickton. Between 1978 and 2001, 65 women went missing in and around Vancouver's east side, gone without a trace, and a lot of them were women of the night. So there was, shall we say, a flagrant lack of enthusiasm when it came to looking for them. Pickton owned a pig farm, which to the unseeing eye looked to be just that, until police made an all too morbid discovery. What started out as a search for illegal firearms became far darker when they found discarded items like an inhaler, a shoe, a shirt, so on. Pickton confessed to taking the lives of 49 women, though he was only tried for half of that, though many of the bodies weren't found because he fed them to the pigs. Anthropologists even brought in a conveyor belt to sift through the dirt in order to find the evidence they needed. What's even worse about this story is that they could have caught him earlier. One of the women he attacked escaped after they both inflicted stab wounds on each other. They were being treated at the same hospital, and the police found a key in his pocket that fit the handcuffs she had on. But the case was dismissed, however, because she wasn't considered a reliable witness due to her drug addiction. So great police work there. Gold star. Number 6. Jeffrey Epstein. Yes, yeah, we are here, and here he is. If you have been lucky enough to have been living under a rock, then move on. There is no reason for you to even know his name, you lucky human. But for all those who've heard it but aren't quite sure what happened, well, you might as well know now. Epstein was a wealthy financier who seemed to have unlimited connections with the world's elite, but for reasons that go beyond the material. Epstein was convicted, to put it lightly, of exploiting and inappropriately taking advantage of female minors. He abused and manipulated young women into recruiting other young women into his circle of exploitation. He would lure them into giving him massages for money, which would turn into... yeah. The authorities compiled a 53-page long indictment that gave a hefty reason for Epstein to be given a lengthy prison term, though prison is where he died. Epstein was found unresponsive in his cell several weeks after he entered prison, and it is believed that he took his own life, though some people suspect foul play. Due to his wealthy connections to people like Prince Andrew, there is a much bigger case here, which makes Epstein the perfect example for someone we wish never existed. Ugh, I hate this guy. Ugh. Number 5. Albert Fish. Ugh. The Gray Man. You've probably heard of him before. You know me, you know this channel, and you know we talk about some pretty dark stuff, especially people who like to, I don't know, viciously kill for a living. But out of all of the ones I've covered on this channel, this name still feels like ash in my mouth. The crimes of Albert Fish were so abhorrent, it's almost unfathomable. Also known as the Brooklyn Vampire or the Gray Man, he killed one victim for every state, or so he claimed. A notorious sadist, he exploited, kidnapped, and tormented his young victims, all while hiding his deeds from his wife and his 6 children. Which was pretty easy at first. He looked like a regular shy guy on the street, someone you wouldn't look twice at. But beneath that facade of the ordinary lied an extraordinary killer. He also practiced masochism and would regularly punish himself by lighting his body on fire and puncture himself with nails. If he did that to himself, we can only imagine the extent to which he went when it came to his own victims. Awful. Awful human being. Ew. Get out.
Moving on to number 6, we have Otis Toole. Otis Toole, or the Jacksonville Cannibal, is a serial killer convicted of 6 counts of murder. He's most famous for killing the son of America's Most Wanted host, John Walsh. In an interview from 1993, we see how dark and twisted Toole really is. He would talk about his dark desires, like watching an entire city burn. He then went on to justify his killings, saying that taking someone's life is no different than stepping on a bug or eating animal meat. There's way more disturbing stuff that he discusses, but it's just too much to talk about on YouTube. Like, he goes into depth about his killings. It's way too much to hear. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Joel Rifkin.
Tragedy happens in lives. Unfortunately, it was their lives.
The world wouldn't know his name until after his killing spree had ended. Now, in a rare prison interview, serial killer Joel Rifkin talks about his sickening crimes down to the smallest detail.
Joel Rifkin was an American serial killer responsible for taking the lives of 17 women in the 1990s. He was caught in 1993 when cops pulled him over for a missing license plate. But to their horrors, they found his latest victim in his trunk. He was then sentenced to 203 years in prison. In this interview, Joel just seems so proud of himself when he's recalling his crimes. He also talks about the police's interrogation process and why he confessed to the crimes. The most disturbing thing though is when he admits to keeping trophies from each of his victims. He said he did this so that he could remember each victim and what he did to them.
As the numbers started to increase, an ID would, okay, that has a photo, I know who that girl was, or a piece of jewelry, okay, I know that it's from that girl.
In our 4th spot, we have Israel Keys. Israel Keys started his killings in 1996 and continued on until March of 2012 when he was finally arrested. He was known for traveling to a number of locations to commit his crimes. Then he would rob banks and homes so that he could afford to travel to kill. In this interview, we see him talk about his killings and how he selected his victims.
When I was smart, I would let them come to me. Just remote area.
People just found it gross how calmly he talks about this all while eating a bagel and drinking. He continued on saying what his strategy was, and that was to grab people in remote locations like parks and campgrounds, even cemeteries.
You might not get exactly what you're looking for. There's not as much to choose from in a manner of speaking, but there's also no witnesses really. There's nobody else around.
In our 3rd spot, we have Chris Watts. If you've seen the Netflix documentary on Chris Watts and his family, then you know how messed up this whole story is. Chris is guilty of killing his wife and their 2 daughters. When he was brought into questioning, he denied having anything to do with this. But after failing the polygraph test, the police started nailing him hard. That's when he came up with this elaborate lie about what happened.
After that, I went downstairs and I want to protect her. What? I want to protect her. You don't want to protect her?
It's crazy seeing him put on this whole show and turning his wife into a criminal, saying she was the one that hurt their daughters and then he hurt her as a result.
Huh? She hurt him? Yeah. And well, no, not her. You hurt her.
In the end, the officers saw right through his fabricated story. But still, it's crazy. Moving on to number 2, we have Richard Kuklinski.
I could get over on you, I'll get you to do what I wanted you to do, is to hurt your family.
Richard started killing at a very young age. He committed his first murder when he was just 13 years old. Over the span of his career, he took the lives of around 200 people. Could even be more. I mean, he would often kill homeless people just for fun. On top of that, he worked as a hitman for the mafia. So yeah, his count is pretty high. It was revealed that any person who was ever deemed his friend was eventually killed off by him. In 1988, he was caught by an undercover cop and sent to prison. In this interview, it is truly disturbing to see the lack of remorse he has. Listen to him talk about him shooting a guy.
And I went pop, 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 and then I went pop, pop. And I could see the material moving on his jacket as these things. Actually, they made little marks on it. On the jacket, I guess they were burn marks.
I think the scariest part was all of a sudden during the interview, he gets this messed up smile on his face and just stares at the interviewer for an uncomfortable amount of time. I legit got uncomfortable for the interviewer. And then, after that long, unbearable pause, he starts asking the interviewer questions.
What do you think about me? Anything good, bad, or indifferent?
It just made me cringe. It's so bad. And in our number one spot, we have Zachary Davis. This interview gave me the chills. It makes me so uncomfortable. So this is the interview of Zachary Davis. In August of 2012, he took his mother's life before trying to set his house on fire with his brother inside. Now, Zachary has been diagnosed with a number of mental illnesses, including schizophrenia and depressive disorder. In 2007, when he was 9 years old, his father passed away from ALS, and that apparently started this all. He just spiraled out of control and became withdrawn. He even had an app on his phone about serial killers, and in his notebooks he would write about disturbing things, like you can't spell slaughter without laughter. The creepiest part of this interview is when Dr. Phil asks him about the murder weapon, which was a sledgehammer. At one point while discussing it, he literally smiles as if he's proud of what he did. That sent shivers down my spine. It is terrifying.
Dude, guys, like I knew he was bad, but dug deep today, and I would never thought I would say this, but number 2, Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin made his own henchmen disappear in photos, and boy do we wish it was him instead. Stalin was the premier of the Soviet Union and was responsible for the deaths of more than 20 million of his own people, double that if you count World War II. He ruled for 30 years and ruled with an iron fist, eliminating anyone who opposed him, and as you can guess, there were many. In 1927 and 1929, he had 1 million people exiled or imprisoned, 9 to 11 million were forced off their lands, and 3 million peasants were arrested or exiled in the mass collectivization program. 6 to 7 million were killed by artificial famine in the 1930s. During 1936 to 1938, he executed approximately 750,000 during the Great Terror, a brutal political campaign to remove dissenters and any others he considered a threat. He was so paranoid. This guy had no regard for human life whatsoever. While the world was focused on Adolf, he was doing all of this, and he was fighting on the Allies' side, though we started supporting Hitler, and then he came onto our side. Anyways. It is estimated that Stalin orchestrated the deaths of 60 million people, which means about 40,000 people died every week during his reign. Need I say more? And if you think that's bad. Number 1 spot, Mao Zedong. Ready? I don't think anyone can be. Mao Zedong during 1966 to 1976 turned China into a house of fear by eradicating 65 million people. In his attempt for a socialist China, he killed anyone that got in his way, kinda like Stalin, through execution and mass starvation. His biggest threat was the intellect, and revered Emperor Xi Huang, who buried 460 scholars and sought to surpass him by burying alive 46,000 scholars. Yep. My stomach turned when I read that. That's awful. He coined his operation the Great Leap Forward. To combat rising resistance, he created the Red Army, composed of girls and boys from the ages of 14 to 21 to roam cities and target enemies of the state, especially their teachers. He would make the teachers wear dunce hats, cover their faces with ink, and make them crawl on all fours and bark like dogs. He also expanded a system of 1,000 forced labor camps. Most amazing fam, I could go on, but I honestly don't have room. It just seems like there's no end to all the awful things that he did. For all these reasons and more, Mao is of course in our #1 spot. Oh god, the world would definitely be a different place if these people weren't born. Perhaps we'd be in a better place, or maybe someone worse was waiting in the sidelines, who knows.
Then we have Charles Manson. Famous cult leader Charles Manson had the reputation for being quite wild and acting strange in his interviews. This interview that I'm about to show you was conducted by ABC News. The interviewer is questioning Manson about the murders he committed. At one point he asks Manson to describe who he is in a sentence. What a question. And then Manson just kinda loses it.
People look at you today, 20 years later, and they still have no idea what you're about. Tell me in a sentence who you are.
That must have creeped the reporter out so bad. Like, this dude was just out of his mind. After doing all those weird expressions and body movements, he tells the reporter he is nobody.
Nobody. I'm nobody.
Just the way that he whispered that sent shivers down my spine. But that's not all he had to say.
I'm a tramp, a bum, a hobo. I'm a boxcar and a jug of wine. And a straight razor if you get too close to me.
I have no clue what any of that means. Was this Manson just putting on an act? I mean, at one point he was diagnosed with schizophrenia and paranoid delusional disorder, but some people think he was just too smart for his own good and was just faking it all. Either way, this video gives me the creeps. In our 9th spot, we have Casey Anthony. In 2008, Casey Anthony's young daughter Kaylee went missing. Casey was obviously arrested for her disappearance and death, but in the end, prosecutors were unable to conclusively tie her to her daughter's death. In this interview, we hear Casey's side of things.
What I remember is being in bed, my
morning.
mom coming in before she left for work and saying goodbye to us, and then waking up several hours later. 2 hours later, and not knowing where she was.
So your parents had her?
My dad did.
Next thing you know, she's missing, right? How did it play?
I did what I was told. I don't remember too much of what happened.
Her story just doesn't add up, and everyone knows that she did it. They just can't seem to get enough evidence to prove this, and it's incredibly sad. Coming in at number 8, we have John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy was an infamous American serial killer in the 1970s, who was given the name the Killer Clown. Why? Well, he would often dress up as Pogo the Clown for neighborhood events or children's parties, which seemed to be his way of meeting his victims. In one of his interviews, he talks about why he would dress up as a clown.
The clowning was relaxation for me. I enjoyed entertaining kids. Like some people are, they unwind in different ways, either we're going out drinking or that. I could put on clown makeup and I was relaxed.
That's an odd way to find relaxation, but he continues on saying he genuinely loved being a clown. The interviewer ends up asking him if he enjoyed it because he could then lure victims to him, and Gacy denies this. That's not why he liked it. He liked it because it brought him back to feelings of being a child.
I've always told people when I got into clown makeup, I regressed into childhood. It was fun being a clown because you could be yourself or just let yourself go and act a fool. You could be slapstick and funny and have a good time. That's why I always enjoyed clowning.
Just knowing the horrors that he has done makes everything he says so scary. The interview gets worse though when the interviewer starts asking questions about Gacy's victims. According to him, he doesn't remember any of the horrific deeds that he has done.
I have a lot of things that I've forgotten that I can't remember. For instance, I can go back to my childhood and stuff and I still remember that, but yet I can go into the 70s and there are a lot of things I can't remember.
He then proceeds to grab a book that is filled with his victims' pictures and information and claims that he has studied the book over and over and can't remember anything.
I don't know if you notice here, we got pictures of every one of the victims here, and believe it or not, for the last 12 years I've studied these photos of these victims.
And there is no, we have a shot of all of the victims together here. And when you look over at the photos, I have no recollection of any of them. Never met them. They're just names and faces. And when you look at them, the thing of it is, we took it a step further. We went into their backgrounds. I wanted to know where they were at, what schools they attended, who they hung out with, and what kind of activities they were into. And that's what we dug up on each one of the victims.
Now, what he is saying is sick for a number of reasons. Many people believe that he still remembers his victims, but he's just faking this all. And in the end, he is receiving pleasure by learning more about his victims, and this also helps him recount what he did to them. Coming in at number 7, we have Jeffrey Dahmer. This interview of Jeffrey Dahmer that I'm about to share with you is said to be his last interview ever. It all started when Jeffrey started torturing animals at a young age. Then when he was around 14 or 15, he started to have impulses to hurt humans instead.
I don't know, it became a compulsion, and it switched from animals to humans. I still don't understand it. I don't know why.
If your fantasy life as a teenager includes killing, who do you tell?
It then just got worse and worse according to Dahmer.
Started having obsessive thoughts of violence intermingled with sex. And it just got worse and worse. I didn't know how to tell anyone about it, so I didn't.
You thought that was bad? Well, he goes on to talk about his first kill, which happened when he was only 18 years old.
I was 18 years old, driving home. I saw this hitchhiker about a mile from my house. He caught my eye. I drove past him, thought to myself, should I stop and pick him up or should I just keep on going? I wish I just kept on going, but I didn't. I turned around, picked him up, and that's when the nightmare became a reality.
It's the fact that he can recount all these horrors with no emotion, no tone whatsoever. It's like he's reading from a script. He shows no remorse. In our 6th spot today, we have Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was known to be super intelligent, charming, and manipulative during his interviews, so interviewers had to be extremely careful. He knew exactly what people wanted to hear and carefully catered his responses to that. The interview we're going to look at today is from 1977 while Bundy was in prison. During the interview, the reporter asks him if he's nervous about the evidence that they have against him. This was his snarky little reply.
Okay, I mean, you have access to information, but I'm on the inside. I know what's there and I know what isn't there. I've seen the files and I've heard the reports. And Lord knows I'm the first and foremost person who has the personal and intimate knowledge that it couldn't be me, that it's not me, that I'm innocent.
Although everything he was saying was a lie. He often would try to manipulate the interviewers into thinking he was innocent when we all know that was not the case. Take a look at this next clip, for example.
What happens if you're in prison 5 years and nothing like what has happened in the past happens again?
What do you mean?
I mean, any of the things that you have been accused of by innuendo, by rumor, by the police departments or whatever. What if there are no killings or no kidnappings?
It's already happened, hasn't it?
The main thing to focus on here is his facial expression. The smirk, the struggling to hide a smile when the guy is talking about Bundy getting caught and going to prison. I think any normal person would be scared of being caught, especially when they know that they did it. But Bundy was so cocky and assured of himself that he thought he was gonna get away with it all.
Number 5, Dennis Rader. I'm surprised that I haven't added him to this list earlier, but I needed to do a part 7, so I guess here we are. The BTK killer, the man not only known for taking the lives of 10 victims, but for how he did it. Between 1974 to 1991, he baffled police with his violent crimes in Wichita, Kansas. BTK was used to describe how he took their lives. I'll have to ask you to look that up because YouTube gets mad at me when I say those words, but I think you can guess that he took his time and he did it viciously. What's even worse is he had everyone fooled into thinking he was a kind, family-loving, God-fearing man. He disappeared after taking his last victim in 1991, but he returned a few years later annoyed that no one had caught him and that the press had died down. In 2004, on the anniversary of one of his crimes, the Otero family, Dennis sent a floppy disk to the police. This helped police track him down to his church, but even then, it wasn't until 2005 that he was finally arrested and sentenced to 10 life sentences. 1 per victim, I guess. I think we know why he's on this list. Number 4, Ed Kemp. Good old Eddie Kemp. Again, weird that I haven't added him to this list sooner. A weird kind of evil because he actually ended up giving authorities a ton of information on psycho killers. But alas, he haunts my dreams, and I just really wish we didn't have to worry about men like him. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I will take ghosts, ghouls, poltergeists, whatever over human beings any day. He had a strange talent for making people believe he was a gentle giant, all while committing 10 of the most gruesome crimes. With an IQ of 145, he easily manipulated his victims into trusting him before it was the last thing they ever did. Standing at 6'9" and weighing 250 pounds, he used both brawn and brains to overpower the women he took. He showed obvious signs of pathological need to kill from a young age, starting with the family cat, all the way to unaliving his paternal grandparents at age 15. You get the gist. Even then, he was able to convince mental health professionals to let him go early. He was charming. He was easy to get along with. He was likable. And he did this. From 1972 to 73, Ed used the line, "Ugh, I don't have all day," to convince hitchhikers to enter his car, implying he was in a rush, put pressure on them, and convinced them that he didn't have time to kill them. They also never caught him. He turned himself in before they could. Number 3, Ted Bundy. Yeah, we're hitting some heavy hitters today. Men like Ted Bundy are the reason women carry keys in between their fingers when they walk at night, or like the reason we cross the street. It's honestly men like some of the ones I mentioned already. Born on November 24th, 1946, who would have known the man he would become? By all accounts, he had a good family, but at an early age, he was already showing dark tendencies. He would spy on unsuspecting women and accumulated an extensive juvenile record, which was wiped clean when he turned 18. He was going to be a lawyer, but soon gruesome deaths spread throughout the nation. He tended to prey on young, attractive college women from Washington, Utah, Colorado, and Florida. He would use his looks and charm to lure them into his clutches or ask them to help him with his books. He would strike them over the head, force them into the vehicle, and drive away to carry out the rest of the deed. He confessed to taking the lives of 36 victims, but alluded that there may have been more, closer to 100. His court case was an absolute media frenzy, because no one could believe such a charming, attractive man, he's not that good looking, could be capable of such horrible things. But suddenly the world was shown. Evil wears a pretty face. Number 2, Andrew Philip Cahoe. Things could have gone either way for Andrew. He loved helping people, but also was quick to anger. Considering he's on this list, we know which direction he went. When he was 14, the stove exploded, setting his mother on fire. Andrew watched her burn a little too long before he grabbed some water and put it out, but by that point it was just too late. Andrew showed the telling signs of darkness through his cruelty towards animals, once beating a horse to death. He married a wealthy woman named Ellen Price in 1911, but despite this, the couple fell into debt. Ellen got TB, pushing them further into debt until finally, at long last, Cahoe snapped. On May 18, 1927, Cahoe took Ellen's life by hitting her in the head. He set the barn on fire with explosives. He had previously placed explosives around the Bath school, and after he burnt down the barn, he drove over and detonated the bombs at the school, killing basically everyone who was inside. Then he filled his truck up with more explosives, admitted the crime in front of everybody, and then detonated the truck with a Winchester rifle while he was inside. Number 1, Jean Bedel Bokassa, one of Africa's most brutal dictators, and was even accused of consuming human flesh and even feeding his opponents to animals. He was the self-crowned emperor of the Central African Republic until he was kicked out in 1979. His coronation alone bankrupted his own country, as it basically cost the entire GDP. He took all of the government posts for himself and established what has been referred to as a reign of terror. He personally oversaw brutal beatings and made the rule that thieves should have their ears cut off. He arrested school patrons for not wearing uniforms made in the factory he owned, and even had 100 of them executed. In 1980, he was finally sentenced to death in absentia, though he decided to return to Africa in 1986. Why he was allowed to, no idea. From there, he was tried again for his crimes, but he never faced the death penalty. Instead, he just went to jail, and he was released in 1993. Then he died, and then he was pardoned in 2010. What? Why was he pardoned? He was literally the worst. Number 10, Ferdinand I, King of Naples. Ferdinand, what a name. You had so much promise, but then you had to go ahead and take the phrase, keep your friends close, Keep your enemies closer, way, way too literally. Everyone was so excited when Ferdinand first became king of Naples. He was smart, courageous, confident. He had all the promise of being a wonderful king, but then the power must have gotten to his head or something, or he was really insecure, because soon his intent turned cruel and malicious, especially if you were on his bad side. Ferdinand liked to have dinner parties with his enemies and loved them so much he wanted them to stay forever. He would imprison them, even throw them out of windows, before retrieving their corpse and staging them in what he called the Black Museum. I know, Black Mirror, right? He had them embalmed and then dressed in the clothing they wore while alive and placed at the dinner table like they were enjoying a banquet. To all those on his good side, his so-called Black Museum became a grim warning should he ever be crossed. If he suspected any of his subjects were going to betray him, he would even invite them to visit the museum so they could see where they might end up. Charming. Number 9, Hernan Cortez. There are several reasons as to why this man was the absolute worst of the time. The Spanish conquistador left blood wherever he went. 1. He decimated the Aztec Empire with his forces and slaughtered thousands of defenseless people. 2. He was rumored to have taken the life of his wife and enslaved over 20 Mesoamerican women to be his concubines against their will. Yay! 3. He also exploited Aztec and indigenous political systems for his own gain, even imprisoning a king in his own home. Number 4. He, along with his fellow explorers, gave them blankets infecting the population with smallpox. Whether they knew this would happen remains up for debate. The history of colonialism is bloody and cruel in a lot of ways, with Hernan Cortez being one of the cruelest. It's strange to think that much of what we know today wouldn't exist without conquistadors like Cortez, but I always wish that things never went the way they did. But as many people on this list prove, we are not short on cruelty in the history of the world. Number 8, Emperor Zheng Da. So almost immediately, people didn't love this guy when he rose to power. Imagine being in a monarchy, it's just like a roll of the die. Is he gonna be crazy or is he gonna be sane? We just don't know. Firstly, there was a rumor that he wasn't a legitimate heir and that he was born by one of the queen's handmaidens, not the actual queen. But he took full advantage of his role and became one of the most notorious leaders during the Ming Dynasty. His court lived in constant fear, as many of his upright officials were purged and taken out. He didn't have much interest in courtly affairs and wanted instead to become a military general. He had a crowd of eunuchs that followed him everywhere, to whom he entrusted many government matters. They were very corrupt. He also liked to give orders to his imaginary double named General Zhu Shao. He left his court to be entirely run by his eunuchs, who allowed corruption and terror to breed, while he retired to pleasures in his own castle. He was also known for demanding cruel punishment, such as that which he did to one of his eunuchs who wronged him. Number 7, King John. I'm actually reading a book about him and his brother right now, which is really interesting. King John wanted so badly to be remembered, but he just reeked so bad of desperation that he stunk up all of history. King John was so awful, he became immortalized as the main villain in the tale of Robin Hood. For a long time, John lived in the shadow of his terrifying and mighty older brother, Richard the Lionheart. But then Richard had to go off to reclaim the Holy Land, leaving the throne empty. Kind of. Despite attempts to prevent John from weaseling his way onto the throne in Richard's absence, John did so anyway, and no one could stop his cruelty. Richard died in 1199 from gangrene, and John began his reign. Let's see, where do we begin? Well, he took the life of his own nephew. He starved whoever he considered an enemy, including the wife of one of his best friends. He repeatedly retreated in battle because he was such a coward. He extorted and exploited his own country by enforcing ridiculous taxes and much more. He had to be forced to sign the Magna Carta, a charter of rights that remains one of the most pivotal documents in history. So needless to say, where his brother Richard established a legacy of heroism and valor, John did the exact opposite. Number 6, Attila the Hun. Attila? More like, I'll kill ya the Hun. He left a bloody and horrific legacy throughout his reign and conquest across Europe in the 5th century. Born in 406 AD, Attila was sent to the Roman court at the age of 12 as a hostage. Sometime between then and adulthood, Attila grew into a ruthless king who took the life of his own brother before embarking on his violent conquest. He pillaged over 100 cities and even arrived at the gates of Rome. It was his reign that plunged much of Europe into the Dark Ages. He is responsible responsible for that. The attacks his armies made were so horrifying that the name Attila became synonymous with chaos, destruction, and death. To the Romans, the Huns were barbarians led by the Scourge of God, yet another name for Attila. His rampage was so fast and vast that the empire just couldn't sustain itself. Eventually his rule ended, but there was a weird moment where a Roman princess named Honoraria sent him a ring and asked for him to help her escape. So there was like a weird romance happening. She was engaged to someone she didn't want to be married to, and she thought Attila was a better choice. I don't know. Attila claimed her as his betrothed, though he had like 20 wives already. God, leave some for the rest of them, you know? Though he was inevitably denied, he went on another bloody crusade because he was so heartbroken, but looks like he didn't really need that much encouraging. Number 5, Oskar Dirlewanger. The 36th Grenadier Division under the SS in World War II Germany was an experimental division that used hardened criminals as enforcers, and they were led by one horrendous man, Oskar Dirlewanger. He was a veteran from World War I and started out as a volunteer for the SS until he began to abuse his superiors. A 1942 Reich police said, and I quote, that he was a mentally unstable, violent fanatic and alcoholic who had the habit of erupting into violence under the influence of drugs. That was somebody from World War II Germany saying that about him. You know what I mean? They were so evil and they said that about him. Right? He was thrown in prison, and that should have been the last anyone heard of him. But then, SS official Gottlob Berger got a hold of him. They served together in World War I and they were buddies, and Berger pulled him from prison and sent him to fight. This led to his position as the leader of the Grenadier Division, aka the Dirlewanger Unit. His unit was made up of some of the worst criminals imaginable, and as a result, they were responsible for the torment of civilians without discrimination. All the most horrific things you can think of. Eventually though, Dirlewanger was captured by the French and handed off to the Polish to be finished off. They tormented him for days until he finally died on June 5th in 1945 from the injuries he sustained while being interrogated. So it feels like a fitting end in a weird way. So kind of satisfying, but because he was awful, truly. I left out a lot of the stuff, but just Google it. You'll see. Number 5. We're mixing it up here. It's not all rulers. Charles Manson. I feel like I could just leave this guy's name up here, and I'm not sure if I'd have to say anything else, so I think I'm gonna go now. Kidding, I'll keep talking if you want. But if you need a reminder, he was an incredibly twisted cult leader that orchestrated the killings of several people, most famously actress Sharon Tate. He ran a cult in the 1960s called the Manson family, where he slowly but surely convinced his followers that he was pretty much a god. His eyes were drawn from science fiction, so you know it's true, and the occult, and preached that an apocalyptic race war was coming. He was a master manipulator, and one of the ways he kept his followers close to him was by gaining dark secrets, even if he had to create them himself. He led the group to believe that in order to unite them as a family, they all had to kill the people he said they had to. Little did they know that Manson had one of the groups attack the Polanski house due to a record deal that never went his way, like years before, even before Roman even moved there. I've said it before and I'll say it again, it's one thing to do the killing yourself, that's brutal, but it's a whole other thing to convince other people to do it for you and for them to believe that it's the right thing to do. Like, just wow. That's a whole different level of evil. Number 4, Luca Magnotta. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him so much. Was he a mass murderer? No. But did he commit one of the most haunting and terrifying crimes that still makes me want to vomit to this day? Yep. Do I wish I'd never watched the documentary Don't F with Cats? Absolutely. Something about this crime struck a chord in me that I just can't shake. June Lin should still be alive today, but he isn't because of this man. Scarborough, Ontario native Luca Magnotta started out like most serial killers, killing animals in brutal and public ways. History is 2020, and there were tons of clues as to where this pathological need for attention was going to end up. Luca not only brutally killed sweet, innocent animals, but filmed them for all the world to see and put them on the internet. Why nobody I mean, there's a bunch of people who tried to track him down, but still, like, where were the police? That's like, this guy's literally like, I'm a killer, catch me. He set the internet on fire, and when that got the attention he wanted, he upped his game and violently stole the life of Concordia student Jun Lin. He did everything he could for attention, and the pathway towards his bloody deed is so inhuman, but apparently he's doing just fine in prison. He got married recently, which is good for him. I even hate the fact that I'm talking about him right now, so let's just move on, shall we? There are bigger fish to fry. Number 3, Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. Back to our evil rulers theme we had going for a while there, King Abdullah has to be on this list. He violated so many human rights throughout his reign, and the fact that his rule was actually so recent just goes to show that we aren't so far away from the horrid rulers of the past. He was ruthless when it came to heresy against his reign, and would severely punish and torment any and all who spoke out against him, in a very 1984 kind of style too. To give you an example of just how far he went, he sentenced a blogger to 1,000 lashings and 10 years in prison just for setting up a website and saying his piece. That would be like me or any of the MA hosts being arrested for saying any critique against the government on this channel. Like, that's insane. And he didn't stop there. The blogger is just one example of the 1,000 political prisoners who have been arrested and tortured just because they asked a question. King Abdullah died in 2015 and his reign remains a controversial one, as he did also try to negotiate peace in the East, but many will always remember his medieval ways of torture and imprisonment. Number 2, Nero. Nero the Zero. Last time we talked about Caligula, and I believe some of you mentioned him in the comments, so I feel like we have to talk about Nero. I honestly don't know what it was with burning pyres, as I mentioned before. Like, just make it quick, just get it over with. If you want someone dead, why make it slow and awful? But that's because Nero enjoyed watching people burn to death. He just loved it, it was the best. What didn't this guy do? He used burning Christians as lights for his garden, he kicked his second wife to death, he killed his mother and brother to secure his evil rule. The man seemed to delight in cruelty the same way we love eating cake on our birthday. Another common form of punishment was having the criminal tied to a post and torn apart by animals. He had a fascination with animals. He was so weird. What Nero reportedly did to a woman named La Costa, a woman his mother hired to kill his father and brother, will haunt your dreams. He had her assaulted by a specially trained giraffe before she was fed to animals. How did he train a giraffe to do that? That's my question. He was more than likely a sociopath with even weirder sexual tendencies. He also loved animals being involved, like a bloodier and sadistic furry. He would often dress up as a beast and have his array of lovers, male and female, tied to posts and pretend to bite them. Okay, like, I mean, do you. Or don't, Nero, don't do you. I don't even know what that is. Nero was an arrogant, narcissistic ruler who even had his own crowd of people who followed him and cheered for him, but that was about the only people who cheered for him. That was it. And last but not least, Joseph Mengele. I feel like I could do a list of a bunch of evil people from World War II because there were just so many. Mustache Man was just one head of the Hydra because, of course, there was the Angel of Death, Joseph Mengele. Cue the shiver down your spine. He besmirched the name of doctor because the last thing he did was value human life. When we think of the atrocities of World War II, Auschwitz and camps like it are a black stain that forever left the world changed. However, that was Mengele's haven. He was the one who selected and administered the gas in the chambers, but his horrors didn't stop there. He was infamous for his inhumane and horrific genetic and hereditary research he performed on unwilling patients, specifically twins. He would infect one twin with a disease, i.e. typhus, and transfuse the blood between the siblings to see what would happen. He even put like petrol in their bloodstreams. How crazy is that? He also tried to change people's eye color through nefarious means, and the list goes on. The saddest, most painful truth about this man was that he was never tried. The families of those who survived never got to see justice get served. Though, in a poetic sense, it kind of was. Mengele escaped to Brazil and used a false name for many years, but it was later discovered that he had a stroke while swimming and drowned. But when his body was discovered, they decided to use it for medical studies.
We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Lester Eubanks. In 1965, Lester was convicted of taking the life of Mary Ellen Diener. As a result, he was given the death penalty, which later got changed to a life sentence. Now, over the years in prison, apparently Lester changed his ways and became very well behaved. In fact, on December 7th, 1973, they let him go out to Christmas shop for his family. While out in a mall, he managed to escape his guards and flee. To this day, he still hasn't been caught. He's out there somewhere in hiding. Who knows where he fled to or what he's up to now. Coming in at number 4, we have Robert William Fisher. Now, this guy is one of the FBI's most wanted fugitives. He is on the run after a triple homicide and arson. On April 9th, 2001, Fisher took the lives of his wife and 2 children before blowing up their house. It is still unclear as to why he did this, and he's been on the run ever since. And police have no leads. On April 20th, his car was found in a forest near Payson, Arizona, but Robert was nowhere to be be found. On November 3rd, 2021, Fisher was removed from the FBI's most wanted fugitives list. But despite them doing this, he still remains a very wanted fugitive. In our third spot, we have Bradford Bishop. Bradford Bishop Jr. is a former United States Foreign Service officer who is now a wanted fugitive. On March 1st of 1976, Bishop started to spiral after not receiving the promotion he really wanted. He then left his work early, drove to the bank, withdrew money, and then bought a sledgehammer, gas can, shovel, and pitchfork. He then returned home where he killed his wife, mother, and 3 sons. He then drove the bodies several miles away before burying them in a wooded swamp area before setting them on fire. As a result, he was placed on the FBI's list of 10 most wanted fugitives. They have no clue as to where Bishop is now. He could be anywhere, but they do believe that he fled to Europe. Moving on to number 2, we have Arthur Hutchinson. Arthur Hutchinson has lived a life of crime for murder, attempted murder, theft, and burglary. In fact, he spent 5 years in prison for the attempted murder of his half-brother. In September of 1983, he was brought into a police station after being arrested for theft. While there, he asked to go to the bathroom and then proceeded to jump out of the bathroom window and fled. He was on the run for 3.5 weeks. While on the run, he crashed a wedding and murdered the bride's father, mother, and brother. Later that day, he broke into another person's home and stabbed all 3 of the residents to death. He was finally caught on November 5th of 1983 and sentenced to life imprisonment. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Ahmed Siraji. From 1986 to 1997, Ahmed took the lives of 42 females. The bodies of his victims were found in a sugarcane field. What he would do was, after killing them, he would bury them waist deep in his field with their heads facing his house. He believed that by doing so, this gave him great power. But he was later caught and arrested alongside his sisters and 3 wives who helped him. One of his wives was actually sentenced to death, but that was later changed to life imprisonment. Ahmed, on the other hand, was sentenced to death by a firing squad in 2008.